What's happening, guys? Welcome to this DaVinci Resolve 17 crash course. Super excited to share this program with you and help you get your first project created in DaVinci Resolve 17. It's a super awesome program and there is a little bit of a learning curve, but don't worry, I'm going to break it all down, make it simple for you, and I think you guys can do it, because if I can do it, you guys can do it for sure. But hey, if you're new here, my name's Jade Lofsky, and on my channel I make tons of DaVinci Resolve tutorials, and I talk about little YouTube tips, help you guys grow your YouTube channel, as well as some gear stuff, because we all love some gear stuff, right? So if you're into any of that stuff, consider subscribing to my channel. So we are going to get right into DaVinci Resolve. I'm going to cover tons of information in this crash course, so you might want to grab a cup of joe or something and make yourself comfy, or refer back to this video. So just a couple things to get out of the way in the beginning here. I'm going to add timestamps to everything down in the description below. You should see it in the progress bar down there too, so you can jump to parts of the video that you want. That way you don't have to watch things that you might already know or that you don't care about. And another thing, I'm also going to give you guys the opportunity to purchase the footage that I'm actually going to use to make our first project. The way this course is going to go is I'm basically going to start from scratch. We're going to go through installing the program. I'm going to show you the interface, the windows, how it's all laid out. And then we're going to actually build our first little project, because I think there's no better way to learn it than actually get in and do a project. I could show you little tips and tricks here or there, but what you want to do is create a project, bring in your stuff, make your project, edit it, and then you want to export it out so you got a video at the end of the day, right? So that's what we're going to be doing. And if you're interested in purchasing the files for this tutorial, you can follow along and do the exact same things that we're going to be doing. So there's also a link in the description for that. And if you want to head over and pick those up, I'd really appreciate that. And anything that you do purchase, maybe it's some merch down below, or those files will go and help support my channel. So the first thing we need to do is actually go ahead and get DaVinci Resolve installed on our computer. So typically I'm working on a MacBook Pro, but for this tutorial, I'm actually going to be using this PC right here, which is an Acer Nitro 5. So this is not a high-end PC. It costs maybe 800 bucks or so. And just real quick, the specs on this machine here, I got them written down here so I don't forget. It's got an i5 8300 processor in it. It's got 8 gigs of RAM, and although DaVinci Resolve and Blackmagic Design recommend 16 gigs of RAM, you can run it on less, so we're going to see how real-world performance does on this machine here with only 8 gigs of RAM. Now, this also does have an integrated graphics card on the CPU, but it also has a separate graphics card. It's got a NVIDIA 1050 graphics card. So that's the specs on my machine here. It's not a super high-end machine. I feel like it's maybe more comparable to something that a lot of you have out there. So the first thing we need to do is go ahead and download DaVinci Resolve. Now, before we get into the website and downloading it, you need to know that there's two different versions of DaVinci Resolve. You have the free version, which is completely free, and you have the paid studio version. So the studio version costs $300, one-time fee, no subscription cost, just one-time fee, $300. It might even be $295 on the website, actually. And you get that program and all of the updates. So I think that $300 for the studio version is a great deal. But I would recommend get started with the free version first, so that way you can try it out, make sure you like the program, it's what you want, before you go ahead and dump 300 bucks on it, because that's not cheap, right? 300 bucks is 300 bucks. So the biggest difference between the two programs, the free version and the studio version, is that in the free version, it's going to mostly use CPU power. So what does that mean? It can make your machine feel a little bit slow and a little bit sluggish. And even if you have a good graphics card or a good GPU, if you're using the free version, it's not going to allow you to take advantage of that GPU. And that's one of the drawbacks of the free version. Now, when we look at the studio version will take full advantage of your GPU and can make a big difference on your performance. So keep that in mind. If things seem a little sluggish on the free version, but you've got a decent GPU in your computer, the studio version is probably going to run a lot smoother for you. But for this tutorial, we're going to be going through with the free version so you can see how it works. And when there's limitations, if any, I'll go ahead and point them out to you. Now, there are other things in the studio version that are in the free version, but they're watermarked in the free version. And a lot of that's effects and more advanced features, most of which you actually don't need to create your videos. You can get by with the free version and create some awesome videos. And I did that for a long time here on my YouTube channel. Free version, lots of videos, before I've decided to upgrade to the studio version, which was totally worth it. I mean, 300 bucks for that program, what you get, totally worth it. But like I said, go with the free version first, try it out, see what you think, and you can always upgrade at any time. So let's jump on to Blackmagic's website. We're going to go download DaVinci Resolve 17, the free version. We're going to install it. I'm going to show you everything start to finish. And like I said, check the time codes down below if you want to jump ahead a little bit. I'm also putting a link in the description below where you can jump right to the Blackmagic Design website and go download DaVinci Resolve. All right, let's check it out. All right, so here we are on the DaVinci Resolve 17 website. You can go ahead and take a look at all this and see all the awesome features and things that it can do. This program's amazing. There's so much you can do. It's awesome. But where we want to go is just scroll all the way down the page here, and we want to download the free version of DaVinci Resolve. So way down the bottom here. And here we go. 2 great versions. So you have DaVinci Resolve, which is the free version on the left here. And on the right, you have DaVinci Resolve Studio. So I'm going to go ahead and download the free version. Now it's going to pop up a window here. Now DaVinci Resolve 17 is in beta currently as of the filming of this video, but if you feel like you need to stick with version 16, that's okay. You've got both options here. So DaVinci Resolve 17 beta, I'm going to go ahead and download it for Windows. So you're going to have to fill out a bunch of information you see here on the screen. No big deal. I've never had a problem with it. I know some people don't like putting in all their info, but I've never had a problem with it. So go ahead, fill this out. And then you're going to come hit register and download. So while this downloads here, I just wanted to take a second and let you guys know that DaVinci Resolve is an awesome program. There is a steep learning curve to it. It helps if you're coming from another NLE editor, you know, maybe you're coming from Premiere Pro or something like that, maybe Final Cut. But if you're coming from maybe iMovie or one of the more basic editors, there's a little bit of a learning curve, and it's kind of steep in the beginning there. It takes a little while to get up to speed on everything, but I can guarantee you that if you guys stick with it, you're going to be able to figure it out, and then you're going to be off and running. And one day it's just going to click, and you're going to be able to cruise through videos and really get through projects much quicker than you will in the beginning. So don't get frustrated. Make sure you keep working at it. And I've got tons of videos on my channel that are going to help you out if you get stuck. Just come on over to my YouTube channel, search for what you're having a problem with, and there's a good chance that I made a video about it. So it looks like it's about done downloading here, so let's head on over. We're going to get this guy installed, show you how to install it, and then we're going to get into the program itself. All right, looks like DaVinci's downloaded. We see it over here. I'm in Google Chrome, so I'm going to go ahead and click that. We're going to open it up. So as you can see here, it's in my downloads folder, so I'm going to head and click on this, and then I'm going to do extract all, because it comes in as a zip file. So I'm just going to put it back in the same location here. I'm going to say extract, and it'll pull out all our DaVinci Resolve files for us. Now here we've got several options of things that we can install. So I'm going to go ahead and just install all of them. Now I would install all of them except for maybe this first one. You're probably not going to have the control panels, but you can go ahead and install it anyway. I'm going to do all of them. So click install. So while DaVinci Resolve is starting to install here, there's a couple things you want to start to think about, and that is how are you going to set up your files, not only your media, like your video, your audio, your songs, your music, your pictures, whatever it is you're going to be putting into your video, your assets, where are you going to keep those? And then you also want to think about where's the actual DaVinci Resolve project file going to live. So we're going to talk more about that in a second, but start to think about that. And I do have a video all about DaVinci Resolve workflow. There's a link up here. You can go on over and check that out to see my workflow and what I think might work good for you too. So you can check that out. All right, jumping back in here. Welcome to DaVinci Resolve Setup Wizard. And we're going to go ahead and click Next. We're going to accept the terms because if you don't, you can't install the program. And I'm just going to leave this at the default location. And click install and let it run and do its thing. All right, once it's done, you can go ahead and click finish. And the installation should be complete. So now that we got it all set, I'm going to go over to the start menu. We're going to find it and open up DaVinci Resolve. So in my start menu, I've got Blackmagic Design right here. I'm going to open that up. And down in here, we've got DaVinci Resolve. So go ahead and click that. Just a quick note, when you first open DaVinci Resolve, even after you've already got it installed, it does take a little bit of time. I mean, less than a minute, but still a little longer than you might be used to for an application to just pop up. It's a lot to load up in there, a lot of good stuff, so it takes a second or two to load up. All right, so taking a look at the screen here, it looks like we've got our project manager window. That's what they call this window, and this is where you will see all of your projects on the right-hand side here once you start creating your projects. Now, all these projects live in a database. Now, the database is not your media files and your videos and pictures and all that. The database is only your project files, and your project files tell DaVinci Resolve where to look for those other assets. So you always want to have the database on your internal hard drive. That's going to give you the best performance for all of your projects. Now, it looks like mine came up with a database already created in the default location, but let's jump over here and take a look. If you don't see this database, or maybe you don't see that at all, you just see this, you want to click on this little icon right here, and that's going to open up the databases for you. So right here, local database, that's where you should be creating all of your projects. And if you don't see that or you don't have a database, you can always come down and click New Database. Now, if you're curious to where this is, if you right-click on it, you can say Open File Location, and then that's going to show you in Explorer exactly where that database is created. The database file does not get too big. I've got tons and tons of projects, a couple years worth of YouTube videos in my database, and it's only like 600 megs because it doesn't include all of your media that you actually use in your project. So keep that in mind. So there's a lot of things you can do in this window right here, but I'm going to put a link at the top of the screen. You can go check out this video I've already created about the project manager window and all the cool things that you can do here. But for now, we want to get going and start our first project. So I want to come down to New Project right here. I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and you can name it whatever you want. I'm going to call it My First Project. And once you put a name in, go ahead and click Create. Congratulations, you got step 1 done. That's install DaVinci Resolve and start your first project. So now what we're going to do is we're going to run through the interface. I'm going to show you how the whole thing's laid out. I'm going to explain some of the important features of each section to you, so you have a general idea of what's going on where and kind of how to navigate around this whole program a little bit. So that should help you get going. And then we'll jump into creating a project and some more things like bringing in media. How do we edit it? How do we trim clips? You know, how do we color grade a little bit? Maybe work with the audio a little bit. And how do we finally export? So I'm going to try and keep it pretty basic. I've got a lot of videos that are a little more advanced on a lot of these things. So when I do have a video that can give you more information, I'm going to link to it up at the top of the screen here. You can click on that card and it should shoot you over to another video to give you a little more info and just help you with whatever the particular topic is that we're on. So let's jump in and we're going to go through this whole interface and I'm going to explain it all to you. So here we are in DaVinci Resolve, and this is the first window that I've got open when I first load up the program. So DaVinci Resolve is broken down into different tabs, they call them. Now if we look at the bottom of our screen here, we've got Media, Cut, Edit, Fusion, Color, Fairlight, and Deliver. So I'm just going to quickly click through these. We're going to summarize what they do, and then we're going to jump into each one in just a little bit more detail. And I'm going to give you the basic info that you need to know to get started. The first tab that we have here is Media. Now, this is where you can view and bring in any media that you want to use in your project. For example, video files, music, pictures, any kind of media that you're going to use to create your project. You can bring it in here. Now, it's not the only place you can bring it in, but it's one of the main places that you can go through and bring in your media. The next page here is the Cut page, and this is kind of like a simplified editor. It's used for making videos that are maybe less involved. Maybe you have a ton of footage, you got to cut together a whole bunch of different clips. You can do things really quickly here in the Cut tab. But if you have a little more advanced edits, and what I typically recommend is that you just jump over into the next one, which is the Edit tab. Now, the Edit tab is going to give you all the options that you need to create pretty much any kind of video. This is the more advanced tab as compared to the Cut tab. You've got more tools, easily accessible. Most of the work that I do is I always do it in the Edit tab, and I just find that that works out best for me. The next tab here is the Fusion tab. Now, this may look a little crazy to you, but the Fusion tab is used for creating effects and more advanced effects. Maybe it's 3D effects or text effects or animations or things that are more advanced. So that's a whole animal in of itself, and we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to it. The next tab we have here is Color. Now, the Color tab is where you're going to do all of your color grading for all your footage. Now, DaVinci Resolve has a super robust color editing system here built right into the program. It's one of the best color grading softwares out there. And even before the editors were good here in DaVinci Resolve, it used to be used for color grading footage, movies, all kinds of stuff, TV shows, you name it. They used to use the Color tab to do it. The next tab we have down here is Fairlight, and that is going to be a complete audio editing piece of software built right into DaVinci Resolve. I love me some good audio, and I've got tons of audio tutorials, and there is just an amazing amount of stuff in here that's super good that can make your audio sound awesome and really take it to the next level. Again, each one of these tabs is super deep. There's a ton of stuff in there, but in this video, I'm just going to be covering the basics, and that should get you set going in the right direction. And the last tab we have here is the Deliver tab, and this is going to be where you export all of your projects, whether you want to export 4K, 1080, you want to do just audio, you want to do any kind of codec. There's 100 different options in here of different ways to export your project. So that's what's going to happen in the Deliver tab here. So now that you have a quick overview understanding of how they're laid out, let's go back to each tab, and I'm just going to point out some of the key features and run over the interface of that tab so you're a little bit familiar with it as we get going here in our project. All right, jumping into the Media tab here, let's run over the window. We're going to start at the top. In every tab here, you've got different menus with all kinds of options up here, and that's going to be the same regardless of what tab that you're in. Down below that, you've got options like media storage here, and what we see on the left here is our hard drives. We've got our computer drive and my external hard drive, and that's how you browse around to find whatever media you want to bring into your project. So for example, I'm going to browse here to my project, and we're going to find some media to bring in. So I've got a folder here I just navigated to, DR17 tutorial, and these are all the video files that are in this folder that I want to bring into my project. And we'll get to that shortly here. Over here on the right, you have your viewer. So for example, I can click on any one of these clips and it's going to show it here in the viewer. Now it's not in my project yet, but I can scrub through here and see what the clip looks like. I can set in points and out points and bring just that part of the clip into my project if I want. But the viewer is super helpful just to see what's going on there. And you've got some other tools up here like the audio levels you can look at. You can look at metadata. The inspector here is going to give you information about anything that's in your media pool. And capture, you don't have to worry about that getting started here. Moving down here, you have favorites on the left, and that's going to be, if I made a shortcut to this directory right here, for example, it'll just shoot you to wherever you want to go. Now down here is our media pool. Everything is organized into different bins. Right here on the left, we've got a master bin. Now, if I right click here, we can add a bin, and a bin is basically just another folder. So let's say all footage, just so we can start to organize some stuff here, right? So everything that you see here in the bins is actually in my project. So I have this folder art set up called all footage, and we'll get to dragging in some footage there shortly after we run through all of these different windows here. Now down here, you have smart bins, and you can organize them by keywords in all kinds of different ways. So that's the basics of this window. We're going to look for our clips and we're going to bring them down here into our media pool. And like I said, we'll get to that shortly. But first, I want to just run over all these windows for you. The next window we have here is the Cut tab. And let's just start right at the top. Again, you see all your menus up here. And now we have a few more menus down below that. And we have a little icon with the name. So we have our media pool. The media pool is where all of your footage lives. You've got a sync bin that'll allow you to sync up audio and video clips or multiple video clips. You've got transitions. So this is a quick way to get to all the built-in transitions that you can use between clips here right in DaVinci Resolve. All this stuff's built in. It comes with the program, so you can get to that really easy. You can get to your titles really quickly. And if I hover over any of these, you can see it'll give me a little preview here over in my viewer, which is on the right. So you can see a little preview of the animation. And that's super helpful when you're trying to decide what should I bring into my project. And the next icon here, we have effects. So there's all kinds of different effects that you have here in DaVinci Resolve. Again, most of them are available in the free version, but not all of them. There's some that won't work. And it'll pop up a message and tell you whether it's available or not, or whether it's watermarked. You'll see that when you add it to your clips. So it makes these things really easily accessible and quick to get to in the Cut tab here. Now over here in the next window, that's your viewer that we already talked about. Any footage that you've got in your timeline, you would see right here. And you've just got different ways to view things up here with these icons. You can quick export a project. If you've done your edit here in the Cut tab, you don't even have to go to Deliver. You can do it right here in the Cut tab. You can look at it full screen, and you've got your inspector over here. And we'll talk a little bit more about the inspector. It's super important, but we'll get into that more once we get some footage into our project. Down below that, you've got some cool tools like the boring detector, which will cut out dead space in your footage. You've got the ability to split clips. You've got a bunch of icons here that allow you to insert clips, whether you want to append them, you want to ripple overwrite. You want to do an automatic close-up. You want to place something on top of another clip, maybe something on top of a track. You've got a source overwrite. There's all kinds of tools in here. You can cut, you can dissolve, you can do smooth cuts. A lot of these tools are just set up here so that it's quick for you to grab them and use them here in the Cut tab. And that's really the point of the Cut tab, is just for things to go quick. Coming over here by your viewer, you've got your rewind buttons. You've got stop, play, and fast forward, as well as a loop button. Right here, you've got your time code, where you are in your project, and you've got a meter over here that shows you your output levels. Now down here is our timeline, and once we add in some footage, both video and audio, you're going to see that appear here, and you'll see your tracks appear over here. And again, just some different tools over here, which we'll cover as we get to them if we need to, but you can hover over them and you can get an idea of what they do. Jumping over into the Edit tab. So this is the Edit tab here. Run through this window, and this is primarily where I'm going to do all of the work, and probably where we're going to work on this project too, because in my opinion, I think it's the best place for you guys to start. Just get into the Edit tab and get going here. So going across the top here, again, all the same menu. Right here, we've got our media pool, and that's going to be where all our footage lives that we want to drag down into our timeline. So typically, you've got your media pool open. We have our effects library, and again, this is different effects. So you see we've got toolbox, we've got video transitions, audio transitions, titles, generators, effects. We've got open effects, things like blur and dehaze. There's all kinds of stuff. And actually, if I come back up to something like contrast pop here, you see it says in the viewer, DaVinci Resolve, and it's got that watermark. That's what you're going to see if something's only available in the studio version. But you've got all kinds of different audio effects. There's all kinds of effects right here, and they're quick and easy to access if you want to drag them onto a clip or whatever you might want to do with them. Next, you've got your edit index, and that's just going to give you some information about your clips, times, and where they are in your timeline, things like that. You've got a sound library that you can download for DaVinci Resolve, and I'm not going to cover it in this video, but you can head on over to their website and download the free sound library, or just click right here. That should bring you to it. Across the top, you've got your project name, and then over here we have our mixer, which if you open that up, that's going to give you audio information, show you some faders along with your levels of your audio clips. Next, you've got metadata, where it'll show you metadata for any one of your clips. Last here, you have the inspector. And again, we're going to cover this in more detail, but this is super useful. You're going to be using the inspector all the time, so you want to get familiar with everything that's in here. And this last little button here, which is on both ends, you can see it right here as well as over on the other side. I'm going to call it a box with a down arrow. When you click on it, it's going to extend whatever is showing here all the way down to the bottom of the screen. Sometimes you just need a little more room, and that's how you can do it. And now it looks like a little TV up here, and if you just click it again, it's going to shrink that window back. So coming over here, this is our viewer. This is where we'll see our footage that we bring into DaVinci Resolve here. So right now we see nothing, but once we get something in our timeline, then you'll see it. Coming down here, you've got a bunch of different tools in here that we'll get to a little bit later on. You have a jog wheel here that allows you to scroll through footage really quickly. Again, you've got your go to previous buttons, your stop, your play, and looping buttons. Over here, we've got a match frame, as well as marking in points and out points. Moving down below that, right here, this is an important button right here. This is your timeline view options, and this affects the way that you see your clip in the timeline. So we'll get into that more shortly. Here, we've got a bunch of different tools for editing, and we're going to get into those in a little bit as well. Here we've got flags and markers that you can put on stuff. This next set of tools is how you zoom around your timeline. You've got a zoom to extents, a zoom to detail, which will zoom into where your playhead is. And you've got a custom zoom, as well as being able to slide in and out wherever you want. Coming all the way over here on the right, you've got a mute button to mute any of your audio. And this is your audio volume. You can adjust that. And you have a dim button, which kind of reduces the volume output a little bit. If it's, you know, a little loud, but you want to hear something, but you don't want to play with your master volume here, you can just go ahead and turn that on and off. Moving into the Fusion page, just going to touch on this real quick because it's super advanced. And if you're a beginner, you don't really need to know too much about this to get started. But you've got your media pool, your effects library. There's tons of different effects in here, and building things in Fusion is a whole nother animal that we're not going to get into in this video. But just to understand that all these tools are here to build pretty much anything you want to build in the world of video editing. Next, you've got clips that you can look at. You've got nodes, which is how everything is set up in here. And then you've got splines, keyframes, metadata, inspector. This is all way more advanced than we're going to be getting to in this tutorial. This is really for beginners to understand how to use the program, create your first project. But you can do pretty much anything you can imagine here in Fusion. Moving along to the color tab here. This is where you can apply LUTs. You can adjust color grades. You can do any kind of color-related exposure, any kind of thing like that that you want to do, this is where you would do it. Just coming across the tools real quick here, you've got your gallery where you can save what they call stills, which is kind of like presets for any of your color grades. You've got LUTs here. We got the media pool that you can see. Over here on the right, you've got your timeline you can show or not show it. You can look at your different clips. You've got different ways to sort things, to color grade. Again, this gets really deep, and there's a lot going on here. You've got effects you can apply. All kinds of things. But we'll get into this a little bit once we get our project created and I show you how to do some basic color grading. We're just going to cover basics here, but it's good to kind of know the layout of the land here, so to speak. So here is our viewer. This is where you would see any of the changes that you make and your footage. Over here is where all the nodes go for all of your color grading. And then down here are all the color grading tools, which I'm not going to go into right now. We'll cover them a little bit when we get to it after we finish our project. But there's all kinds of tools down here to use for color grading. Now, jumping into Fairlight here, we've got a lot of good info here. Again, we've got our media pool starting at the top here, our audio effects library where you can add all kinds of effects. And I actually have an audio effects series. I'm going through every single one of these clips. Link above if you want to go check that out and know what some of these effects do. You've got your edit index, a sound library that we talked about earlier. You can do voiceover work right into DaVinci Resolve, record right into it. All the way over on the right here, we've got our mixer, which we see on the bottom of the screen over here. You've got your meters, which shows you all of your tracks, as well as all of your levels for those tracks. You've got metadata you can look at, and again, we have our inspector here, which is going to be super important, and we'll get to more of that in a little bit. Next section down here, we've got meters that tell us all kinds of different things, as well as a viewer over here where we can see our video. Moving down below that, we've got our play buttons, a repeat, a loop button, as well as automation buttons. A lot of this stuff's more advanced than you need to worry about, but just so you kind of know what's there. Moving down below that, we've got a bunch of tools for editing our audio here, which we'll cover when we get into our audio edits in the project here. And down here will be our timeline where you'll see our actual audio that we have in our project. And moving on over into the Deliver tab, this is where we would have all of our render settings and how we want to export our project. So over here on the left, you've got your render settings. Again, you're going to see these little icons in the corner here all over the place. You click on that and it's going to make the window bigger for you. There are a bunch of presets here that you can use, although I do recommend some custom settings, which I'll tell you about and link to some videos about, so that way you can set your own settings, because I find that they work better. And the presets here, they're all right. Not great, but they're okay. Moving over, this will be your viewer where you see all of your footage that's in your timeline. In the section all the way on the right, this is going to be where you see your jobs that you've created. Maybe you want to render it in 4K. Maybe you want to render it in 1080. You can set up all kinds of jobs here and just render them out whenever you want. And at the bottom here, we have our timeline. This will show our footage and everything that's in our timeline when we have it created. And we're going to talk more about that once we get our project done. Hey, real quick, if you guys are enjoying this video, could you go and hit that like button for me? Hey, maybe even subscribe if you're interested, but definitely hit the like button. Thanks a lot, guys. Let's get back to the video. So that's an overview of each tab, kind of what's going on in there, and what some of the key features are. So I hope you're sticking with me. You're doing good. We're making some good progress here. You're getting some of the basics under your belt. And now we're going to move into the fun stuff, right? Actually creating our first project here in DaVinci Resolve. So let's jump back into Resolve. And one of the first things I want to look at are some project settings that are going to help us be successful here in DaVinci Resolve. So let's jump in and check it out. All right, so I'm here in the Media tab, which is the first tab here on the left, and it doesn't really matter which tab you're in to take a look at these project settings, but let's come on up to the top here, go to DaVinci Resolve, and we want to come down to Preferences. Now, in our Preference window, make sure you're on the User Settings right here, and we want to come down to Project Save and Load. Now, right here, I don't know why these two options are not turned on by default, but Live Save and Project Backups. Why would you not want these on by default, right? So Live Save is going to continuously save. Every time you make a change, DaVinci Resolve is going to save, and you should be good to go so you don't lose any work if DaVinci Resolve crashes out. And likewise, the project backups are automatically going to be created by DaVinci Resolve if you turn them on. But you got to turn them on, which I don't know why they're not on, but they're not. So let's get in here and turn these on. So Live Save, boom, check it on. Project Backups, boom, check it on. Now you can leave these default settings here if you want. I'm okay with backups every 20 minutes. That's fine for me. Hourly backups for the past 2 hours. That's okay for me too. But daily backups for the past 2 days. Now, I like to keep backups a lot longer than that, just in case. I'm going to say 30 days, which, hey, maybe that's a little long, but you know what? I'm going to say 30 days. You can pick any amount of days you want. I'm going to go with 30 here. So I'm just going to double click in here and change this to 30. And then you have your project backup location. So where do you want to save these guys at? So for me, I save them on an external hard drive because I don't have a ton of space on my MacBook Pro or even on this computer here. There's not a big hard drive on there. I forget what it is, 256, 500 gigs. I don't know. It's not a lot. So I'm going to save it on my external hard drive, which is an SSD drive. If you want to know what SSD that I use, check out the link in the description below for the Samsung T5 SSD hard drive. Works out great. 1 terabyte drive. And I use it for all my projects. So once you have that set in here, you should be good to go with the project save and load settings. So the next two options we want to change that are going to save you a lot of headaches are under UI settings. So go ahead and click here, and you want to come down to these last two items here. There's stop playback when a dropped frame is detected. You want to make sure there is no check mark there. And stop renders when a frame or clip cannot be processed. You want to make sure that both of these are not checked. They used to be checked on by default. Looks like here they're not checked on anymore by default, which is good, but double check your settings because you don't want it to stop playback when a dropped frame occurs. You just want it to keep going. Who cares? You drop one frame. So what, right? Keep going. And you don't want it to stop the render if a frame can't be processed. And that happens all the time for random reasons. Maybe a animated piece of text, one frame is no good, and then it stops the whole render. Forget that, right? We want it to keep going, blow past it, because most of the time you end up with a render that's just fine anyway. So make sure those two are unchecked. Another option you can check is under the System menu here, Memory and GPU. And you want to make sure that these two are boosted up as far as they will go. And you can let the GPU get selected automatically if you want. Now keep in mind, like I mentioned in the beginning, if you're running the free version of DaVinci Resolve, it's not going to make much use of the GPU, regardless of what kind of GPU you have. That's just one of the limitations of the free version of DaVinci Resolve. But if you have the studio version, it's going to make full use of your GPU. You can go ahead and make sure whatever you want is selected there, and you're going to get better performance. So just keep that in mind here. Now, coming down to media storage, you can check that, see where it is. And I've got a whole video about media storage and setting up your files and where DaVinci Resolve keeps your files. So link above, you can go check that out. But if you don't want it to be on your internal drive, you can go ahead and click add, and it will set up a new location for you. And that's where all the cache files and all that kind of stuff is going to go. So I'm actually going to come and click add. And I'm going to pick a new directory too on my external hard drive. And I already have a directory set up for my other project. So I'm going to go ahead and click on DaVinci Resolve Working Files. And I'm just going to let it make all the folders right in there. So there's a lot of other things here in those preferences that you can change and take a look at. But those are the main couple things that I want you to take a look at and make sure you have set up this way, so that way it doesn't cause you headaches later on as we get moving in our project. So go ahead and hit save and close this window out. So now that we covered the preferences, let's quickly take a look at the project specific settings. So preferences are for the whole program, any project that you start, right? Project specific settings are for that specific project. So there's a couple things we want to take a look at and adjust in there too. So let's jump on over and I'll show you how to get there. So there's a few ways you can get to project settings. One is come to the file menu here and come on down to project settings, or you'll notice in every single tab of DaVinci Resolve, down on the lower right-hand side here, you've got a house icon, which is your project manager. And that brings you to this, which is what we saw in the beginning and my first project. That's where we are now. Go ahead and close that. But the next little cog gear icon here is project settings. So go ahead and open that up. So under master settings here, this is where we can set the master timeline resolution and frame rate playback for our project. Now you can come in here and set it here, or there's going to be a shortcut I'm going to show you on how to get this all set up automatically for you based on your clips. But if you want to come in here and change, your timeline and your frame rate, you've got all your different frame rates here. Your playback frame rate, your different resolutions here. This is where you could change it and set that up for your project. And likewise, the monitoring down here, you can change that if you need to. So some important sections down here under Optimize Media and Render Cache. So there's different ways that you can optimize your media or create proxy files to make playback smoother. And I've got some other videos on that. I'll link to a few of them above here. You can go check that out. I don't think we're going to need to use them for this particular project, but you might if you're having slow playback or playback problems. Check out some of the videos I linked to above, and that should help you out a little bit. So under the Optimize Media and Render Cache, I'm going to leave all these items as they are for now. We're not going to get into it too much, but one item I would change is I come down here and where it says Enable Background Caching after 5 seconds, I'm going to change that to 1. You can either just click on there and drag to the left, or you can just punch in the number 1. So I'm going to change that to 1. What the render caching is that DaVinci Resolve will pre-render stuff kind of in the background whenever you stop working. So transitions, fusion effects, anything like text effects or animated text or animated things, DaVinci Resolve will start to render that in the background. I'm going to show you how to turn that on when we get to there. But you want to make sure it's set up here so that way DaVinci Resolve starts working as quick as it can. And then the next 2 items here, you can turn those on too. Automatically cache transitions in user mode and automatically cache composites in user mode. Next down here, you have working folders. So these are going to be set by default based on wherever you set up that original file back in preferences. So these will just automatically be created. You don't necessarily need to change them unless you want to move it to somewhere else. And that's all the settings that you need to worry about in here for master settings. So there's a lot of different settings here in the project settings that you can change and play with, but these are some of the important ones that I think are helpful as a beginner that you want to know about and that you might want to change or adjust. All right, so I think that's it with getting all our preferences and project settings set up. Now let's get to the fun stuff. Let's bring in some footage. So like we already talked about, I am here in the Media tab, which is all the way on the left, and you click on this guy right here. So looking on the left here, I've navigated to where my folder is that has all my media, and this is everything that's in that folder, all these clips right here. Now I want to bring them all into this project. Now, like I said before, I've got a tip on how to set up your project timeline resolution and your frame rate super easy without having to go through that project setting menu. Let's check it out. So what I want to do is find a clip that's going to be the resolution and frame rate that I want. For me, I know I want it to be 23.976 frames per second because that's what I filmed most of my footage in. And I know that I want it to be 1080 because I filmed everything in 1080 because I think 4K was a little overkill for this. So if I grab this little slider here, I can slide over and just check out the frames per second here. And I'm going to look for one that's 23976. So there's one right there. So I'm going to drag this file down into my media pool first. Now, when I do that, it's going to pop up this window that says Change Project Frame Rate. And I'm going to say change because I want my project frame rate to match the clip I just brought in, since that's the way I'm going to be creating this project. So I'm going to go ahead and click Change. Now, one tip, it only works like that on the first clip that you bring in. So if you bring in a clip that's the wrong timeline resolution or frame rate, and you actually want something else, then you'll have to go in and change it manually. It's not a big deal. You can always go change this stuff in the project settings like I showed you already. But in order for it to set up by itself, you got to drag in a file, a video file that's got the resolution and the frame rate that you want. It just makes it a little bit easier and kind of cuts a step out when you're setting up your project here. So now that I've got one in there that is exactly what I want for the timeline resolution and frame rate, I'm just going to come in here and I'm just going to Control A, select all of them and drop them into the media pool. And as I mentioned earlier when we were first taking a look at this tab, if I click on any one of these files here, it's going to show me a little preview over here in the window in case I'm not sure what's in the file. Maybe I don't need everything. You can scrub through it, play it, see what's in there, and that'll help you out if you're only needing certain clips or you're not sure what you need. So now down here in my media pool, you see I did create that folder that said all footage. So I think I'm actually going to rename that to B-roll. I want to put any of my B-roll footage in there because I can use the media tab here to kind of start to organize my footage a little bit if I don't want it all in just one spot. You can leave it all like this. That's fine too. It's up to you. It's whatever you like to do. But I'm going to change this. I'm going to right click on here and I want to come to rename bin, and I'm going to call it B-roll. So now I'm going to look through my clips here, and I'm going to select multiple files, and I'm going to bring them into that bin called B-roll. So I'm going to select this one up to, I know all these are B-roll, all the way up to this one where I start talking, my talking headshot. So I'm going to hold Shift and click all the way across. I'm just going to drag these guys and drop them into that bin. So you can organize as much or as little as you'd like. I'm just going to go through real quick and grab any of the rest of them that look like B-roll, and I'm going to go ahead and dump them into this folder. All right, so now that I went through, I kind of organized things a little bit. I think we're in a good spot here in the media tab. We've got all the media that I want at this point in time, and now we're ready to go and start editing together our video. So you've got a few options here. You can jump into the Cut tab, which if we look back in Resolve here, you got the Cut tab right here. You can jump into there and start editing in there if you'd like. However, I'm going to recommend that you go right to the Edit tab because I feel like most of the time you're going to end up in the Edit tab anyway. So I feel like you should jump over in there. And if you're just getting started, get started in the Edit tab because it's going to be, in my opinion, a little bit easier to get going and just be familiar with the tools there because you've got everything that you need as opposed to working in the Cut tab. And sometimes then you have to go from the Cut tab to the Edit tab to do certain things. It can get a little confusing, especially as a beginner. And like I said, the learning curve's a little steep, so I'm trying to simplify it as much as I can for you. So in hopes of simplifying it, I'm gonna have you go right to the Edit tab. So here we are in the Edit tab. You can see it right down here at the bottom of the screen. Let's get a little bit better of lay of the land here as far as how we're gonna be working here. So again, down on the bottom here is our timeline. That's where all our footage is gonna go. So where's my footage, right? So come on up to the top. We've got our media pool here. Go ahead and click that open. So now that we see our files here, we want to take a look at them and see what they are. So if I go ahead and double click on any one of them, it's going to bring it up in the viewer right here. Now this is not in my timeline yet because you can see down here, there's nothing there, right? So this is just the viewer showing me what is in this file, and I can scrub through, I can play it, I can listen to it, I can do whatever I want here to see what's in the clip. I can set in points, out points, all that kind of stuff. Now I'm going to go ahead and put on my headphones so I can hear what's going on here in this clip. But if I just play through, all right, I can hear noise, I hear me talking, that's perfect. Now this is just a viewer, so come on up over to the right-hand side here and look at this little icon, looks like a window. It says Dual Viewer Mode. Go ahead and click on that. Now that should open up two viewers for you. So you have a viewer on the left and a viewer on the right. So the viewer on the right is whatever is in my timeline. And right now there's nothing there, so we don't see anything. On the left here is a viewer that shows me what's in my media pool that I have selected. So if I go through any one of these clips, it's going to show me in this viewer what I'm selecting in my media pool. Now this is helpful because it allows me to select in points and out points or just portions of a clip to bring into my timeline if I want to. But let's say I just want to add a clip to my timeline and get started here. So I'm going to come double click on my first one. That's the one I want to use. So all I'm going to do is click on it, hold, drag it down into the timeline, and I'm going to let go of my mouse button and it drops it right in the timeline. So nice job. You got your first clip in the timeline. Now you notice it brought the video and the audio. So let's take a look at our timeline here. How can we see what we're doing a little bit better? Oh, and real quick, by the way, if you don't see both viewers, you may need to hover over the edge of the clip here because if it's too small, you might not see both viewers. You might need to extend it out a little. Make sure you can see everything there. So if you're having issues with the viewers, you could give that a try. So I see my clips down here. They're awful small. How do I get them a little bit bigger so I can see better? So the first thing we want to do is come over here to our timeline zoom options. So we've got this one, which is zoom extent, which zooms to everything in your timeline. And in this case, that works out pretty good. So you notice on my video clip, which is on top, and it says video track 1, most of it's blue. I can't really see too much what's going on here. So how do I start to play through this? Well, if you hit the space bar, that's going to go ahead and play through your clip. So let's try that. Like this. Oof. All right, there's me fumbling around a little bit. So you hit the space bar to also stop playing through your clip. Now, what if I want to change the way I see these clips? For example, maybe I want to see the waveforms on my audio clip here so I know where to make my cuts and stuff. Well, that's where we want to come over to this guy, the timeline view option. So go ahead and click on that. Now you've got different options here that will change the way you see your timeline. So you've got subtitle tracks here. I'm going to turn that off because I don't have any subtitles. You've got this guy right here, which is audio waveforms. So that's going to turn on the waveforms. You want to make sure it's highlighted like that. Now you notice you still can't see it because that audio track is not big enough just yet. So the next item here, we have view options, video view options. So you've got the smallest track here, the simple view. You've got thumbnail view, which is what I like. Or you've got the film strip view, which shows you video across the whole top of the thing. I kind of feel like that's a little overkill, so I'm just going to go with the middle option here. Next, you have your audio view options, and these are different ways to see your waveform. So you've got non-reflected, you got the full waveform, and you got a little border they can throw on there for you. So you're saying, Jay, I still can't see the waveform, so why does this mean anything? Well, that's where the track height comes in. Now, our video is already, got a little height to it. You can make it as big as you want or as small as you want. We'll go in the middle there. Now the audio track here, this is where we're going to see the waveform. So you can see if I open that up, now we can see our waveforms, and that's going to help us a lot when we go to make our cuts and make our edits. So timeline view options, an important window that's going to help you get the right look for your timeline. So now that our clips here are a little bit bigger, you notice we can see the names of the tracks, and we've got some things going on here. So the first thing we want to do is rename our track so it makes a little more sense. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on where it says video 1 here. Just going to select all of it, and we're going to change this to 5D Mark IV so I know what the track is. Now the next track for audio, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to double click, going to Control A to select everything, and I'm going to call this Audio 5D Mark IV. And go ahead and hit Enter when you're done, or just click outside, and it should save those settings for you. So while we're here by the track names, let's just take a look at these couple icons right here real quick. The first one is Lock Track. You click that, you can't make any changes to your track, locks it in place. The second one here, Auto Track Selector, don't worry about that for now. And then this one right here is your disable video track. It's basically like a on-off button for your track. You turn it off, you can't see anything. And down on the audio track, we've got our lock track again, so you can't change anything. Your auto track selector, don't worry about that for now. Next, you have a solo button, and what that does is you click that, and it will only play the track that is soloed. Or you can have multiple tracks soloed at once, but it will only play that track. It saves you the trouble of having to go through and mute everything else. And last, you have the mute button here. That's going to mute just this specific track. So it's good to know those and keep those in mind. Now you see this little 2.0 there? That means this is a stereo track. If it was mono, you'd see a 1. And if it was a 5.1 surround sound, you'd see 5.1. So good stuff to keep in mind as you start working on your project here. All right, so now we're ready to get in to start editing and cutting up our clip. So the next questions you might be having is, all right, how do I cut a clip? How do I delete part? How do I get what I want in the timeline? So we're going to take a look at just a few tools in this toolbar right here. The first one is your selection tool. And this just lets you select different tracks or objects or elements in your timeline. As a beginner, the next two, don't even worry about it. You can skip over those. The fourth one here is the blade tool. And this is going to allow you to make cuts on your clip. For example, if I click it and turn it on, you see when I hover over my clip, it shows me a little blade. And anywhere I click, it's going to make a cut on my tracks. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Control Z and just undo that real quick. Now the blade tool does have a keyboard shortcut for it, and that's pretty much what I use all the time. So that keyboard shortcut is Control B on a PC, and if you're on a Mac, it's Command B. So if I come to right about there, I'm going to hit Control B, and that's going to go ahead and cut my clip. So if I back up a little bit here in my timeline, you can see it made a cut on my clips for me. So again, to play through my clip and just kind of see what I got, you're going to hit spacebar. And another tip for you is if you want some easy keyboard shortcuts to play forward, backwards, and stop, you can use the J, K, and L keys. And I've got a video about that. Link above, you can go check that out if you're interested. So these are your primary editing tools, really, the cut tool. I mean, that's what you're going to use most of the time when you're trying to put together your videos. So let's say I have this clip right here and I want to get rid of it. How can I get rid of it? Well, you've got a few options here. You can click on the clip and highlight it and then just hit backspace. I'm going to undo that, Command Control Z. I can select the clip and I'm going to use the delete key. And now the delete key is cool. The delete key is actually going to ripple delete. So let me undo that. So what ripple delete is, if you're not familiar with it, it's going to take the clip, it's going to delete it, and then it's going to take everything that is past the clip on this side, and it's going to move it on over to wherever the beginning of the clip you just deleted was. So ripple delete is super helpful, and I definitely use that all the time. So I'm going to select my clip, I'm going to hit the delete key, ripple delete. Now that part of the clip is gone, I don't need it, and now I have this part that I can play through and see what we got. So I'm going to go ahead and hit spacebar, we're going to play through and see what we got here.
What's happening, guys? Today we're going to be learning how to change the oil on a John Deere L111 tractor. So let's jump into this video.
All right, so I bring it down to me. I know I want to make another cut there. So I'm going to come to the end. Right about there looks good. So I'm going to Control B, make a cut. Now this time I'm going to select this clip, and I don't need to ripple delete it because there's nothing after it. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit backspace. Boom, clip deleted. And now I've got just what I want in my timeline. So I'm going to come to my timeline zoom options over here, and I'm going to click on the minus guide just to zoom out. Now you notice it jumped way out because that's where the setting was the last time this tool was used, I guess, or didn't use it at all, but that's where the default was. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of zoom in to right about there. Now, I got one clip in my timeline. Now we want to start throwing in our footage, and we want to add in another clip. So I'm going to come back to my media pool here, double click on the next clip, and now I've got some, looks like B-roll actually of me walking here. See what the next clip is, B-roll of me walking, and the next clip after that. Okay, it's me opening the shed. So I want to throw in some B-roll clip. All right, so I got a clip of me walking here, looking down at my feet. And let's say I only wanted to bring in part of this clip. I don't want to bring in the whole thing. So I'm going to come forward a little bit. Let's say right about there looks good. I want to set an in point and an out point. So I'm going to come over here, and these two icons at the end here, mark in and mark out. That's going to be your in points and out points. Or keyboard shortcut, you can just press the letter I to set your in point. I'm going to move ahead a little bit, and then I'm going to press O and set my out point. So this is the part of the clip that I want. Now, when I look at this clip, I don't need the sound. I just want the visual, right, of the B-roll. So as I'm hovering over the clip here, you notice we have these two icons at the bottom here. So if I wanted to bring this whole clip, video and audio down into my timeline, super easy. Just click on it, drag it down, and drop it on the timeline, and boom, it's there. So that's one way you can do it. I'm going to delete that. Now let's say I wanted the video only of this clip. Well, I could come down here, grab the video only icon, drag it down, drop it in my timeline, and then I get the video only. Gonna undo that. Now likewise, if I want the audio only, go ahead and click on the audio, drag it down, you get just the audio only. So that's a few ways you can bring the footage into your timeline, and it's super helpful to know about these options right here. Now you also have a few other ways to drop some clips into your timeline. If you come down, you look at these couple icons right here. The first icon is Insert Clip. So I can just click that, and it's going to insert the clip right there. Now this is good if I want to insert a clip, say, in between two clips. So let's say I want to insert this clip in between these two. Not that I would, but for example's sake here, boom, you can see it dropped it right in between the two clips. So I'm going to undo that. The next icon here is Overwrite Clip. So if I, let's say I have my playhead right here, I go ahead and click Overwrite Clip. It's going to insert my clip from the media pool on top of and in place of the clip that was already there. Sometimes you might want to use that. I haven't found a need to use it too much, but the option's there to do that. Now the last tool here is Replace Clip. So if I select this guy, and then I'm going to hit Replace Clip, you can see it takes out the section of the clip that matches with, you know, what I want to replace it with, and it will replace the clip. It's very similar to the overwrite clip. Now for me, I generally don't use these options too much. If I do, it's usually this first guy, the insert clip. So I'm going to go ahead and undo all these. Primarily, I'm going to drag it from here down and use one of these options here. So like I said, we only want the video, so let's grab that, bring it on down into the timeline. So now that we got our first clip in the timeline, let's talk about some other tools you're going to need to know about as you work here in DaVinci Resolve on your project. So the first one we want to talk about is your inspector. Super important. There's a ton of stuff that we can do in here, so let's check that out. Whew, you guys are doing great so far. I hope you're hanging in there, you're doing well. Remember, you can always refer back to this video, and if you're enjoying it, it's helping you out, definitely give this video a little thumbs up for me, would you? I'd appreciate it. Thanks. All right, so we have our first clip in here. I'm going to go ahead and select the clip by just clicking on it, and I want to open up my inspector. So I'm going to come on all the way up over here, and you see Inspector. Go ahead and click on that. Now, the inspector is full of all kinds of things that we can do to our clip. So you've got a bunch of different categories here. And if you click on the category name, it'll open and close a little menu there with different options in it. Just running over the windows real quick here. At the top, we've got transform. So these are all of your transform tools. You can zoom your video in and out. You can change the position left and right. You can rotate the video, change the angle, you can change the anchor points, you can change the pitch of the video. You've got all kinds of different things here, flip it, whatever you want to do. You can do pretty much anything you want to do with your video as far as transforming it and changing the shape or size of it right here. And then if you look over on the right here, you've got little diamonds. That is your keyframes. And we're not going to talk too much about keyframes in this video, but I do have some other videos about keyframes. If you're interested, I'll link to one above. You can go check that out. Then all the way on the right here, we've got these little circle arrow symbols here, and that's basically going to reset the effect. So, I made a bunch of changes here, and oops, I don't want to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the reset button, and it's going to reset it back to the default settings. Now, if I want to reset all of them, you can just click on this guy right here, and that's going to reset everything back to the default settings for your clip. A few other cool things to know about here is if you hover your mouse over any one of these items here, the numbers, you can just click and slide your mouse back and forth, and it's going to zoom or whatever the tool is you click on, it's going to change it for you. So that's kind of cool. It's helpful to move in small increments when you want to just move it just a little bit. You can just put your mouse right on there, click, drag, and slide back and forth. So that's a helpful tip to know. And just moving down in this window here, if I double click on cropping, you see we can crop from the left, top, right, bottom. You can make it soft, which is like fading your image in or feathering the edge of your image. You've got dynamic zoom here, which is if I turn it on and just you could leave it as it is or change it to any one of these options here. It's just going to dynamically zoom on your clip. So if I just play through it here. All right, it's hard to tell on this clip, but it is zooming in or zooming out just very slowly. And you've got some options to change those things. You can change the composite mode of images. Say you lay something on top of one of your clips. You can change to all different kinds of composite modes, similar to Photoshop if you're familiar with that. You can change your opacity for those modes if you'd like to. The next item here, you've got speed change, so you can change the speed of your clips, which we'll talk about in a little while here. Maybe we want to try some speed ramping or something like that. Like a lot of programs, there's a bunch of different ways to do things in DaVinci Resolve, so there's not just one way to do almost anything. There's multiple ways to do it. So we'll talk about that a little more later on. You've got stabilization. If you're walking with your clip like I am here, we can stabilize the clip. You've got lens corrections for any corrections you might need to make. And then you've got retime and scaling down here. And all this is going to affect the quality of your clips. And right now I'm just going to leave everything at the default. But it's important to know that if your clip looks a little shaky, it doesn't look as good as you think it should, you may need to adjust some of these settings, and they can be adjusted either on a project level or on a clip-by-clip basis. So there is a ton of stuff here in the inspector, and you're going to be using it all the time. You're almost always going to have the inspector open to make changes to your clips. You're going to be able to use the keyframes in the inspector to animate things, move it on the screen, move it off the screen, pop up a subscribe button, kind of like that. All that's going to be done with the keyframes right here in the inspector. You don't have to get too crazy and go to any other tab. You can do it all right here in the inspector. So get familiar with that because you're going to be using it a lot. So also in the inspector, you've got a lot of other items across the top of your inspector window here. So right now we're working on the video part of our clip, which is why the video part's highlighted. And these are all the things we can change in the inspector for our video clip. Now, if I wanted to work with the audio a little bit, I can go ahead and click on audio, and then that's going to give us some other options. We're going to be able to adjust the volume, the pan right and left. You can adjust the pitch. You've even got a basic EQ right here if you need to use a little EQ on your clip, although you can do that in Fairlight in a lot more detail, and that's where I prefer to do it. But you do have the option here to put a little EQ on your clips if you want to. Now, you see we've got a few other options here that are grayed out. We've got effects, so if we put an effect on our clip, we would have an option to make adjustments here for that effect. You've got an option for transitions, which we'll see as we move forward here because we'll try out some transitions. And you've got image here, which is if you have an image in your timeline, you'll be able to make some adjustments there. And the last one here, you just have some file information about your particular clip that is currently selected. So anytime you're trying to make an easy change here to some video or some audio or an image or something in your timeline, check out the inspector here first. Maybe it's a transition, whatever it might be. Open the inspector, take a look, and see if you can make the change that you want to work on, as opposed to having to go somewhere else and do it. Most of the time, you're going to be able to do that right in the inspector here. So I'm just going to go ahead and close our inspector. Now let's take a look at our clip, and I just want to mention a few more things about a clip and some adjustments that you can make that are going to be helpful. The first thing I wanted to mention is that you can fade your clips in and out super easy. So first, you want to make sure that your timeline view options, if we come here, are set to at least this one right here. And you need to have the clip be about the size it looks on the screen. It just can't be all the way small like that. You need to bring it up a little bit so, you know, it's a little bit wider and you can see the image there. But if you come and you click on your clip and you hover over the ends, you're going to notice there's a little white tab there. Well, you can hover over that, click and drag, and that's going to fade your clip for you. So now if I play through the end of my clip,
let's jump into this video.
You can see it faded out. And actually, if I go all the way to the end, it'll fade out to black. So you can adjust that as far as you want. And that little number that you see there, that's the number of frames and seconds. So it's 1 second and 10 frames. So I'm in a 23.976 frames per second timeline. So there's, you know, about 24 frames per second. So, you know, you can do the math, figure that out. But you can make it as long or as short as you would like. Now, let's say I wanted to make this clip a little bit longer and it's already in the timeline. How do I do that? Well, if you hover over the end of your clip here, you see I get this little symbol and you can just click, drag it out. Easy as that. Then you also have this icon right here, which if we had two clips together, you could click it and it would drag them both back together. And we'll look at that more in a little bit. Now, if we look down at our audio clip here, we've got similar options. So you've got the fade in and out right on your audio clip at the top here. So I can fade the audio out. So if we play that now.
On Deere L111 tractor. So let's jump into this video.
So you can see it fades out the audio for us there. And then one other cool thing you'll notice with the audio here is that it's got a little dot on the middle of that fade. So you can actually hover over that. You can grab that little dot and it should give you 4 little arrows, one in each direction. If you click and drag, you can move it up and down. So you can change the way that that fade works. It's not just a constant fade. Maybe it comes in quick and slows down, or maybe it's slow and then dies off quick. You've got all kinds of options there that you can use, whatever fits your particular clip and whatever you're trying to achieve. So I'm going to go ahead and put that back. So those are a couple real handy tools to know about when it comes to your clips here. The next thing I want to mention are these couple icons right up here in your toolbar. So this first one here is the snapping icon. So what that's going to do is allow me to snap to different points. So let's just, for argument's sake here, put a cut in the middle of my clip. So if I drag my timeline, I want it to snap right to this point, right? And if I do it, boom, it snaps right there. As soon as I get close, it just snaps to it. So if I turn that off, and then I try and find, I'll make my window a little bigger there. If I try and find it, it's not going to snap right to it. It's not going to stop on there. So if you're having trouble snapping and getting the playhead to go where you want, go ahead and make sure that this icon, the snapping icon, is turned on, and that's going to help you navigate around a little bit easier. And that'll snap to anything between clips to transitions to audio, pretty much anywhere where there's a point that you could snap to, you'll be able to do it with that tool turned on. Go ahead and undo that. So next I wanted to mention this icon, which is the link icon. So if we take a look at our clips, we see in the corner here, we've got a link on the video and a link on the audio. Now these two are stuck together, right? Because came from the same camera, recorded at the same time, boom, they're there together, which is perfect. Most of the time that's what I want. But what if I have a separate audio track, or let's say for some reason I recorded on another audio track and they just don't line up. Things aren't lining up. How do I fix that? Well, if they're linked together, you may need to unlink them, right? So if you come and you right click on your clip, you can come right here, link clips, hit that. And now when I select just one clip, I can move that independent of the other one. So I'm going to go ahead and undo that. Now, if I come to my clip and let's say I want them to stay together, but for some reason I want to move them separate, right? But I want to make sure that these clips always stay together and that they're linked up. Well, if I just temporarily want to unlink them, we can also come up and just unclick this icon right here. And then that's going to allow me to drag just one of the clips. But you're going to notice it's going to tell me in this little red box here how much I'm moving the clip by. And it's going to tell me, hey, they're out of alignment. They're supposed to be linked, but they don't match. So keep that in mind. If you move things separate or if you have this linked icon turned off, you could accidentally move your video and then it wouldn't line up with your audio, which most of the time you don't want to do that. But there are certain situations where you want to unlink things and you want to move things separately. And those are the two different ways that you can do that. So I'm going to just turn my link back on and make sure everything is good to go. I'm going to deselect them, reselect them, and now they're back together again. So let's add some more footage into our timeline here and start getting this video going. So I want to add in some B-roll. So when I double click on my next file here, it's a clip of me walking. So I want to show, some me walking to my shed where I'm going to be getting out the tractor. So let's say I don't want this whole clip. I just want part of it. And I also know that I filmed this in slow motion. So right now, if I play it back here, just hit the space bar on my viewer. It's a little bit choppy. And actually, if I come and look at my clip here and scroll over, I can see that it was filmed at 60 frames per second, or just about 60, right? We'll call that 60. So I want to actually slow this clip down before I bring it into my timeline. So how do I do that? Well, let's back up here. I'm going to come on my clip. I'm going to right click and I'm going to come down to clip attributes. So go ahead and open that up. Now, when I'm looking at this, this is telling me all the information about this particular clip. And when I look at the video frame rate here, it's at 59.94. So I want to go ahead and change this so that it matches my timeline frame rate. So I'm going to hit the drop-down menu. I'm going to come to 23.976. I'm going to select that. Now, you do have other options in here, but for now, don't worry about those, and you don't have to worry about any of these other ones. But that's how you can take a clip that was filmed at a higher frame rate and change the frame rate so that you can drop it into your timeline in slow motion. We go ahead and hit OK. So now if I play through my clip here in the timeline, you can see it's slow motion. Now, I heard that the audio is not in slow motion, but that's okay because I don't care about the audio for this particular clip. So let's select an in and out range to bring in. So let's say, I don't know, we'll just start right here. I'm going to press I on my keyboard for in point, or you can press this guy right here, mark in. Go ahead a little bit. And then I'm going to come in. You can press O on your keyboard or this button right here, which is mark out. And now I just want the video. So I'm going to hover over my clip, come and grab this guy, drag her on down into my timeline, and then let go where I want to put it. So now let's play through our clip and see what it's looking like so far.
Let's jump into this video.
So I know that this clip is a little long, and I only want it to be, let's say, a second long. Well, here's a good tip for you on how to move the playhead forward just 1 second. If you go ahead and hold your Shift key and then press the arrow keys right and left, that's going to move the playhead ahead 1 second each time you hit your arrow key. And same forward arrow key and back arrow key is going to move it 1 second. Now, if you want to move frame by frame, you can let go of the Shift key and just use your arrow keys, and that's going to move ahead frame by frame, forwards, and frame by frame backwards. So that comes in super handy. I definitely use that all the time. So I'm going to come to the beginning of my clip here. I'm going to hold Shift, press the forward arrow. Boom, there's 1 second. So I'm going to go ahead and press Control B to cut that. Going to select my clip and just hit the backspace key to delete that. So now let's go up and see what my next clip is here. I'm going to double click on it. And if I come through, it's me walking again. So I know that this one was filmed in 60 frames per second. Again, if I slide this on over, we can see right here, 59.94, 60 frames per second. So let's change that into slow motion as well. I'm going to right click on it, come down to clip attributes, come to my video frame rate, and I'm going to change that to 23.976 and go ahead and hit OK. So now I'm going to find a part I want. And, since I'm walking here, I want to have my feet match up from the previous clip. So, I'm just going to pick a spot. I'm going to bring it in and we're going to work with the clip from there. So I'm going to use my in and out keyboard shortcut, I to select an in point, O to select an out point. And I'm going to grab just the video, drag her on down, drop it in. So let's just play through this, see if a second looks like it's long enough. All right, so maybe we'll do a second and a half. So I know that this one's a second. If I come here, hold Shift, forward arrow. And since I'm using, just about 24 frames a second, I can move ahead 12 frames for another half a second. So I just hit my arrow key. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So that's a second and a half. Now, if I hover over the middle of these two clips, you see this icon right here. That's going to allow me to change both clips at the same time, which we mentioned before. So go ahead, click on that, drag it over, boom, snaps it right in. Perfect. Loving it. So now let's have this second clip be just as long. So I'm going to Shift forward arrow key there, and then another 12 clicks of my right arrow key to move 12 frames. All right, that looks good. So I'm going to go ahead, Control B, cut that clip, and I'm going to delete everything at the end. Now, we're looking at this clip here in my timeline, and it's upside down. What do we do about that? How do we fix that? Well, this is where you're going to jump into your inspector and make a couple adjustments, right? So I'm going to click on the clip, come on over and open my inspector. And you may notice sometimes it'll go to one window here when you open the inspector because there's just not enough room on the screen. Don't worry about it. You can close the inspector and get both viewers back. But I'm going to come on over here, click on the video, and now I need to flip it. I've got a few options. You know, I can rotate it or I can just flip it like this. Boom, flipped, good. And that's all I got to do for that. Now the clip is perfect, just the way I want it to be. So now we're going to just take a look at these and try and match up the feet a little bit. So looks like right here I'm stepping with my left foot, and that's when that hits the ground. So in this clip, I'm going to close my inspector here, get a little more room. So in this clip, I want my left foot to be on the ground at the start of the clip. So right about there is where I want this clip to actually start. So you've got a few options on how you can change things. I could come over here and get this icon and just drag the clip into there and then move the clip back by clicking, holding it, and dragging it back. So I'm going to undo that. Now, another option that you have, instead of doing it that way by moving the clip and cutting and stuff, is to come up to this little icon right here. I'm going to go ahead and click on this. Now, when I come over here, I'm going to be able to keep this clip the same length that I have it, but if I use this tool, click and hold, I can scrub back and forth what is showing in my clip, which is perfect, right? So let's say I want my left foot to come down, and it looks like it's throwing it upside down again there. Maybe I undid it too much, so let's just go ahead and flip this for us. There we go. So I'm going to scrub here. Right there is, I think, where I want to match it up. So now let's play through our clips and see if it looks like they line up. All right, it doesn't. So I'm going to come here, drag that over, do the best I can to line these guys up. There we go. That looks pretty good. So not too shabby, right? So that's the basics of how you start to build your video here in the timeline. So I'm going to go ahead and throw a few more B-roll clips in there until I get to the next speaking part. And then we're going to talk some more about maybe some transitions and some other cool things that we can do in our timeline here. But a lot of what we just talked about is the basics that you need to know to start to build and create your project here in DaVinci Resolve. So let's speed this up here, and you can watch me throw in a few more clips. If you're following along and you have these clips too, go ahead and build out a little timeline, make it however you want, and we'll be right back in a second here. So as I'm adding in some clips here, I'm noticing I'm looking through the media pool, and it's kind of hard to tell what's what. I got to click on every clip. So let's take a look here in DaVinci Resolve. Now, if I want to change these to be more of a thumbnail view so I can see what they are a little easier, I can go ahead and click on the tile view here, and then you get a little preview of what the clip is. As you scrub through it, you see it'll show you what's in the clip. Or you've got this one here, which will give you a little bit more details and a little more info about each clip, if that's something that you're looking for. So just different ways to view your media files here, and it could just help you speed things up a little bit. So I jumped into the B-roll folder here because I wanted to add some more B-roll. So I'm just going to go ahead and continue editing this together a little bit. And if you're working on this at home too, see what you can come up with. Oh, if you need to get up, stretch it out a little bit, could you hit that like button for me if you learned a little something? This video's working out good for you? Smash that like button for me, would ya? All right, cool. Let's get back into it. All right, so we just sped through me adding a whole bunch of clips into the timeline. Now let's jump in there. We're going to get some more tips and tricks on how to work with our clips here in the timeline. So I'm in the timeline. I've got all my clips put in here. Now, let's say I want to zoom out so I can see my whole timeline. So I can come over here and click on this guy, zoom full extent, and that's going to show me my entire timeline. Now, you notice I did use the audio from some of the parts where the tractor's running and stuff, because I'm not sure if I'm going to use it or not. So I figured I'd throw it in there, and we can always figure that out later. So any of the clips I wanted to be in slow motion, I did change them using our clip attributes like you saw earlier, just so that it would play back in slow motion in our timeline. So let's come back and let's just play through this here and see what we've got so far. I'm going to just mute my audio track by clicking this guy. So when we get to the audio, we don't have to hear it. And I'm actually just going to make one viewer here. So if I come on up to this guy right here, go click on that. So we just got one viewer. And let's just play through. We got some B-roll of me walking, and then me coming up to the shed. Now, I made this clip a little bit longer because what I was thinking is that we can do a little speed ramp, because that's something that a lot of people like to do, and it's fairly easy to do. So we're going to take a look at that. Now, some of these clips we may need to shorten up or move around a little bit, but I just kind of threw together a little sequence. And actually, this clip right here, I want to make it go in reverse. So I'm going to show you how to do that. We've got me, firing up the tractor. We're going to be coming out of the shed there and going to be going backwards coming out. So we got me firing up the tractor here. I'm going to actually have to trim this one back a little bit. And, we'll just make it as we kind of go along here. So let's back up. Let's come on over to this clip right here of me walking up to the shed. So let's do a little how to speed ramp lesson here real quick. So I want this to speed up, and then maybe where I put the key in and turn it, it's slow, and then it speeds back up again. So how do we do that? So in order to speed up a clip or slow it down, you can select your clip and use Command or Control R to bring up this little icons here on your clip, and it's called speed change. So if I zoom in a little bit so we can see a little bit better, maybe I want to make my track a little bit bigger. You can always do that by coming to your timeline view options and increasing the height of the video track a little bit. So let's say I want this clip to go fast until I get to right about there. So you want to put your playhead where you want it to start to slow down. And then right down here, you see 100%. So come over here, click on that little drop down, and you want to add in a speed point. So go ahead and click that. And now you see the clip is all one clip still, but we've got two different parts where we can change the speed. Now you've got two different options to change speed. You can come to the little drop-down menu again here, come on over to change speed, and you've got the option to select any of these items right here if you'd like. Or if you're not sure how fast you want to make it, or it's just not matching one of those numbers that you saw just a second ago, you can come up here, click on this little icon, and just drag it in. And if you watch that little percentage, it's automatically going up, and that's the speed of the clip. So I don't know how fast I want it to go. Let's try there. And notice I can't see the percentage anymore. So if I zoom in more, now I can see it. It's at 1,137%. So let's just see what that looks like. So it's a little choppy. So not too bad. A little fast. Maybe I'll slow it down just a little bit. Let's bring it down to, say, I don't know, 700%. So by clicking that little top icon, that's going to change the speed of your clip, and you're going to see those little blue arrows change. You can speed it up or slow it down. Now, if you look at the little button at the bottom here, that's actually going to change the location on your clip where that speed change occurs. So this is going to stay the same. Your speed will stay the same. It's just going to change where that takes place on the clip. So if I drag it over, we'll get more of the clip. If I come this way, it's less of the clip. So between these two options, you can really kind of fine-tune how you want your speed ramp to work. So let's just see, play through, walking up. All right, pretty good. It's going to slow down. Maybe I even want this to go faster, longer. So let's pull it over. Yeah, right about there. Play through, boom, slows down, open. And then actually I want to cut this clip right when I start to pull it open because I want it to tie into the next clip. So I've got different options here. You can come over, get that little icon, drag the clip in. Or if you want, you can just hit Command or Control B to cut the clip. And then I can hit this and delete it. And if I play through my clip here, not too bad. So I want it to speed up a little bit longer. Drag that in a little bit. All right, see how that looks. Not too shabby. Might even need to extend this back out a little bit. Now, if I wanted to slide my next clip over to butt up to this clip, if I scoot over, you've got a few ways you can do it. I mean, I could go and grab all these clips and select them and drag them over, but that's kind of a pain, right? So if you just click in the blank space, it's going to highlight it, and then you can just hit your backspace key. Boom, slides it all right over. So that's a handy trick to know right there. So now if we come back to our speed ramped clip here, comes in, and we notice it's a little choppy on the playback, right? So we want to make this a little bit smoother, but it's also choppy on the playback. So this is a great time to get into some things that can help speed up your playback if you're running on a machine that doesn't have too much power. Now, if I was running the studio version on this machine, I can tell you I wouldn't have a problem because I'd be using a lot of the graphics card. But by only using the CPU in the free version here, sometimes it's going to get a little glitchy like that or a little stuttery as you're playing through your clips. So here's what you can do to help get rid of that problem. If you want to come up to your playback menu up here, click on that. You want to come down to timeline proxy mode. And you can change this to either half resolution or quarter resolution. So what that's going to do is just change the resolution of what's playing back in your timeline. It's not changing the actual clips. It's not going to change anything when you render out your file. Everything's going to be full res and all that. But it's just going to play it back at a lower resolution in your timeline so it's easier for Resolve to play it back. And I use this all the time. Even on my MacBook Pro, typically I'll use half resolution. And for me, most of the time, it's not going to make a difference because when I'm working on a laptop, the picture's so small anyway, you're not going to notice the difference if you go down to half resolution, and it's just going to allow everything to play back smoother. So keep that in mind. Change that to half resolutions and start there. The next thing you want to change is, again, come to the playback menu, come down to render cache, and you want to click Smart right here. What that's going to do is allow DaVinci Resolve to pre-render things in the background. So say you stop working for a second, you got to go grab a coffee or something. You stop working, DaVinci Resolve is going to work in the background to pre-render stuff so it doesn't have to do it while it's playing back your video. It's going to do it ahead of time, so once it gets to it, it's no problem. It's not going to stutter through it. It's not going to get jittery or anything like that. It'll just play through smoothly. Now that's going to work for things like slow-mo clips, transitions, text, any other effusion effects, all that kind of stuff. It'll pre-render it. And we did change a setting a while back in the preferences so that it was only 1 second before that kicked in and started. So that's what that would do. So you want to set that render cache to smart, get things working in the background while you're not working. Let the Resolve do some of the work for you, right? So go ahead and click on that. Now you do have the option to create some optimized media. I'm not going to go over all that right now. Here's a link to some videos above that you can go check out that talk about optimized media. And that is basically DaVinci Resolve pre-renders your video files so that way it's easier to play back and it doesn't bog down your machine so much. So if you don't have a lot of power, you're running the free version, you might need to make those optimized media files, or new in DaVinci Resolve 17 is proxy files, which is very similar, although it's portable and you can manage it yourself. But I've got a few videos, again, they're linked above there. You can go check those out if you want to know more about optimized media and you're trying to get smoother playback. And I do have videos all about smooth playback with all the options and things like that in there. So you can head over to my YouTube channel and check that out too. All right, jumping back into it here. So now let's play through this clip and just see if that helped at all. So if I play through a few times here, we can see not too bad now, right? That first time was a little choppy, but after that, it's not so bad. So let's say I want to smooth out that transition a little bit because as it kind of, goes from fast to slow, it just kind of makes an abrupt change. So let's talk about smoothing that out a little bit. How do I do that? So if I come in, I click on my clip and I right click, I can come on up to right here, Retime Curve. On that. And now if I kind of scroll down here, I might have to adjust my window a little. I can adjust my tracks to make my audio ones a little bit smaller there, make this one a little bit bigger. I can even come up here and grab, there it is, push this up a little so I've got a little more room to work with here. When we look at this right here, this is basically a graphical representation of what's going on with our clip. So if I come over here, you see reframe, we've got a little drop down arrow. Now these are all the things that you can keyframe and change in the inspector that are going to affect your clip. So for me, I'm working with retime speed right now right here. So I'm going to go ahead and check that on. And I'm going to turn off the retime frame because I don't need that. So I'll just click back over here. Now you notice when our clip is going fast, it's right here, then boom, it abruptly changes and goes back to normal speed or slow motion in this case. So how do we smooth this out? Well, you notice right here is our little speed point. So if I hover over it and I click on it, you can see up here we've got two options. So this is just a hard change, which is what you see now. But if we click on this guy, boom, gives us a nice little S-curve. Pretty sweet, right? And you've got the option to adjust your S-curve by coming to the little handles here, click, hold, and you can drag it in and out. And that's going to ease in and ease out of that speed change. So let's play through that and see what it's looking like. Again, it's a little glitchy there the first time. And you can see it's a much smoother transition into the slow-mo clip, and I think that works out a lot better. So one of the reasons that it might be stuttering on me here on this computer is because A, I've only got 8 gigs of RAM, B, I'm not using the GPU at all because I'm running the free version. So if I loaded up Studio on here, I'm pretty sure I would have no problem with the playback. But you can see I played through it once or twice and then it seemed to be okay after that. So if you're noticing issues, you might want to try upgrading your RAM or consider upgrading to the Studio version if you've got a GPU that's you can use on your computer already. So I think this clip is good to go. So in order to close all this down, I'm going to just select my clip, right click, and come up to Retime Curve. I'm going to uncheck that. And then while I'm on my clip, I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut Control or Command R, and that's going to turn off my speed controls. So now we're good to go. So if I just play through, it does the little speed ramp there. And, you could add in another speed point at the end and, have it speed up, come in slow, and then speed out. Whatever you want to do. It's all up to you. So now as I open the door here, boom, I got the inside view, me walking in. Might even want to speed that up a little bit. So this seems a little slow here. So, all this stuff I'm just going to be going through and making adjustments. You can adjust both clips at one time. You've got a lot of options and things we've talked about already on how to start putting together your video here. All right, so you got the basics here on how to edit and how to start putting your clips together, how to make adjustments to clips, and really just kind of start building your project, right? These are some of the basics. It's things you need to know that you're going to use over and over and over again. And that's what's going to get your project built, right? So now let's get into something a little bit more advanced, still not too hard, and that's transitions. Everybody loves a good transition, right? We love to use them. They're fun. You like throwing them on your clips, so let's talk about that. So DaVinci Resolve has a ton of great transitions built right into the program. Let's jump over here and I'll show you how to get to them. So we're back in our project, and if I go ahead and close the media pool by clicking on the little media pool button, we want to open up the effects library. So go ahead and click on that. Once that opens, we've got all kinds of tools over here on the left, and the first one is video transitions. So down in the timeline here, I've got my playhead right between two clips, and that's where I want to put a transition, right? So we're going from John Deere to the L111, the model, right? So I want to throw a transition in between these. How do I do that? Well, a new and awesome feature here in DaVinci Resolve 17 is the ability to preview your transitions. This is awesome and a super great feature here in DaVinci Resolve 17. So if I just hover over and drag my mouse back and forth, we're going to see a preview of this transition over in our viewer. Now you can try any one of these. They all work. Some of them might be a little more, processor intensive than others, but you're just going to go through and find whatever you like. Scroll through. There's all different kinds here. And there's even some fun ones down here when you get to the fusion transitions. And these, will be a little bit more taxing on your computer, but depends on, how strong your computer is to how well these things will run. But you've got all kinds of stuff here. You've got noise wipes. You've got all kinds of cool stuff. Zoom in, zooms out. You've even got this cool little burn away one, right? Pretty cool. I mean, for it to come included, that's awesome, right? You almost don't even need to go pick up any. You can just use the ones that are here. So I'm going to choose the glitch here because I think that's kind of cool. So to add the transition onto your clip, just click it, drag it over, and let it go. And it should drop right on your clips. Now, I've got a bunch of videos on my channel about transitions, how to add them, how to add multiple transitions, and an important video, if your transitions aren't working, you try to drop it on your clip and it's not working, here's a link to a video that's going to fix that problem for you, so you can head over and check that out. But I've got other transition videos too. I'll throw them up here in cards. You can check those out if you're interested. But there's a lot of things you can do with transitions. They're awesome. They're just so cool, right? So if we look back at DaVinci Resolve, we can edit our transitions too. We can change the length of it. So if I hover over the end, we get the little arrows. Can make it shorter or longer. We can select our transition and we can come up to our inspector. And now you notice this little transition icon here is now available in the inspector. So we can change the duration here. Again, if I hover over top of the little number there, I can click and hold my mouse, drag it back and forth to change it. You can also change the number of frames instead of seconds. Maybe I want to do, 12 frames. I can key it in. I can move my mouse, change it however you want. You can change the alignment, and it just depends on what transition you're using, and you might get some different, options here of things to change. But it's super convenient to be able to just make these changes right here. Now, one common problem you might run into is you put your transition on there and you see it working in your video, but you can't see it on your clip. So, for example, if I just zoom out a little, see, once I zoom out so far, I can't even see the transition on the clip. So if you can't see your transition, try zooming in closer to your clips there so you can see it. And also, if your videos are really small, you're going to notice that it's a really small icon there at the top of those clips. It's really hard to see. So you got to kind of make those video tracks a little bit bigger so it's just easier to see. I mean, you don't got to go huge like this, but, big enough so that you can see it there. So that's the basics of transitions. It's super easy. Drag and drop, man. Just drop it right on there. You should be good to go. You can add a sound effect if you want down below. The DaVinci Resolve ones don't come with the sound effects, but you can always just drop one onto an audio track and have a sound effect go with that transition. So again, if you're having any troubles or you want to know more about transitions, go check out some of the other videos that I linked to above. So let's go ahead and play through that real quick, see what our transition looks like. Cool, looks good. So maybe I'll make it a little bit bigger. And now one thing you can notice, look at this red line right here. So this is your render cache. This says, okay, this item here can be rendered, and when it's red, it's not rendered yet. But once that line turns blue, that means DaVinci Resolve has already gone through and rendered it, so it should play back a whole lot smoother than when it's red and you don't have your render cache turned on. So if I play through again here, cool, there we go. Looks all right. I'm liking that so far. So now let's go up to this clip right here. Now, as I mentioned when we were playing through the first time, I want this clip to actually play in reverse. I want to zoom into the logo instead of zooming out. And this was just me moving the camera while I filmed it. This is nothing I did in DaVinci Resolve. It's how I filmed it. So basically, I want to play the clip in reverse. In order to do that, I can just select my clip, right-click, come on up to Change Clip Speed, And in here, we've got a bunch of different options. You can change the speed of your clip, change the frames per second. And the one that I want is right here, reverse speed. And that's going to play the clip backwards for me. And I want to keep the timing, so I'm just going to go ahead and hit change. And now, if I play through the clip, so see, it's a little glitchy there the first round, and then it's smooth. And there you go. Now it's zooming in instead of zooming out. And it's just playing the clip backwards there for you. So you guys are doing great. Thanks for hanging in there. I hope you're learning a lot and you're understanding kind of how DaVinci Resolve works and how you can start to put your project together. So now I'm going to take a few minutes here. I'm going to go through and add a little bit more to this project. And then we're going to get back here and talk more about some audio work, maybe how to add in some titles and some other things that you'd be interested in when you're creating your first project here in DaVinci Resolve. And by the end of this thing, you guys are going to be doing great. We're going to export it out. We're going to have a whole project that's all done and complete. And you're going to have your first project done in DaVinci Resolve. So real quick, I want to show you guys how the ripple delete function works here. Super helpful. You're going to use it all the time when you're going through your clips and editing and cutting and removing and that kind of stuff. So real quick, looking at DaVinci Resolve here. So I have a section that I want to remove, and I could just hit the backspace key like we talked about earlier, but then I've got to click right here and I got to hit backspace to bring this clip to meet up with this clip over here. So instead of doing that, you can have DaVinci Resolve delete this clip and move everything over all at the same time, and that's called ripple delete. So if you have a delete key on your computer, which most do, sometimes like on my Mac, you got to use the function key with delete. But on my PC that I'm working on here, I've got a delete key. So if you just hit delete, it's going to delete that middle section, move everything over, and then you should be good to go. You can keep on editing. It kind of just takes one step out of the process for you. So that's super helpful, being able to use ripple delete. And another tip for you, when you're moving around your timeline, you've got a few different ways. So you have the zoom tools that we've already talked about. But if you look here in DaVinci Resolve, you can also use your middle mouse wheel and just click and hold your middle mouse wheel to scroll back and forth like this. And that's pretty convenient. You can also zoom your video clip here in and out by holding Shift and rolling your mouse wheel. If you hold Control and your mouse wheel, that'll scroll back and forth as well. And if you hold Alt and your mouse wheel, reel it in and wheel it out, that's going to zoom in and out of your timeline. So you have other options here of how you can navigate around too. And for me, I find most of the time I'm using my mouse wheel to go back and forth, and I'm using these guys to zoom in and out right here. And I usually pick a level that looks good to me, and then I just continue with my edit. So as you're going through editing, there's going to be times when you mess up, you make a little mistake, and super easy to undo it, just like you would in any other program. You want to go and hit Control-Z or Command-Z if you're on a Mac. So I use that all the time. You might have caught it in this little speed through that we're doing here. Maybe you didn't. I don't know. That's pretty quick. But anyway, Command or Control-Z, undo your last move. And you can do it, a couple times, many times you need to fix your mistake that you might have made. So use it all the time. Command or Control-Z to undo. So, all right, back to the edit. So I have our first go-through edit done here. I've got all the talking head stuff in. Now I'm going to go back and kind of spice it up with a little bit of the B-roll stuff. And you guys can do the same if you've got these files, or just kind of add more to your own project that you might be working on. So let's jump back into Resolve, and I'm going to explain a few more things to you that might be helpful. All right, so this is my overall timeline so far. Again, I just have my video track here and one audio track below that. Now let's say I need to add in another track because I'm going to have multiple items, text, and all kinds of other stuff. Well, I can come right here, I can right-click, and I can come in and add a track. And that's going to add another video track. Now I can also come over here, right-click, and add another track. And when I'm adding an audio track, I can add a mono track, stereo track, or any surround sound track. So I'm just going to go with a stereo track here. And now I've added in some extra tracks. Now you can have as many tracks as you want, or at least more than I think you would need. So you don't have to worry about having too many tracks or anything like that. Now, let's say maybe you want to move a track. You can just right-click on the track and come on down to Move Track Up, or Move Track Down will be available if that's an option. This is the first track, so there's nowhere to go down, but you get the idea. You can move the tracks around a little bit if you'd like to. So I'm just jumping into my B-roll folder here. I've got all kinds of stuff going on. I'm going to just go through these clips one at a time as I watch through my video. I'm going to find things that pertain. I kind of remember what I shot and stuff, and I'm going to go ahead and drop them in. And I'm going to let you guys know how I'm going to do that. Some of them I might put on a track above my primary video track. Maybe I want to insert it. Not really sure. Probably most of them are going to get dropped on this top track. So I might as well just actually call this track here B-roll. B-roll. So I'm going to come back here. Now we did add in those first couple B-roll clips already, so that's just fine. I'm going to zoom in here. I'm just going to watch through my video, and I'm going to drop in the B-roll clips where it seems like they fit. So I'm going to fast forward through all this part, and I'll stop at anything that might be of value to you guys, and then we'll catch up at the end when all the B-roll clips are in. So one of the things when you're adding in B-roll, you probably don't want the sound for it. So a lot of times make sure that, looking at DaVinci Resolve here, when you're in your viewer, you want to grab just this icon right here, and that'll bring in just the video clips. So let me just get an in point and out point here, bring up my funnel. All right, so I'm going to hit I for in point. We'll just call that an out point. Now I'm going to grab just this to bring down just that part of my video. And I don't care about the audio because I'm talking and it doesn't matter at this point. So I'm going to put these guys together, and you can see I used a simple fade to get this started. Now I just want it to go from one to the next, so I'm not going to fade these two clips right here. I'm just going to let it play. So here's a little tip for you. Let's say I don't have an extra B-roll, the oil itself here, so I want to zoom in on this part of the clip. Well, I'm going to come over here, and right there is where I want it to come in. So I'm just going to select my clip. I'm going to cut it by pressing Command or Control B. I'm going to go ahead and select the clip. Open my inspector. I'm actually going to zoom in on those oil cans. And I'm just going to use my tools here to adjust my view to see what I want. There we go. Looks pretty good. So as I'm adding in some B-roll here, I ran into a situation that's going to be common, and then you're probably going to run into this situation too, where I dropped in my clip and I try to play it back in slow motion, but I filmed it at 23.976 frames per second, so when I slow it down, it doesn't quite have enough frames, right? It's a little choppy, a little slow. So let's take a look in DaVinci Resolve here. Now, if I play through the clip, you're going to see that B-roll clip stutters a little bit, right? Now, the reason that it's doing that is because there's not enough frames in this particular clip to slow it down 50% like I did. So there's a couple things we can do in DaVinci Resolve to help any video that looks a little glitchy, that's not smooth. Maybe you got B-roll and you slowed it down, but you know, it was a little shaky or something. We can kind of work with that a little bit here in DaVinci Resolve. So if you select your clip, come on over to your inspector, open that up, and you want to come down to Stabilization. You can go ahead and open that, and you can click right here. Just click Stabilize. You don't have to do anything else. You can just hit Stabilize, and it's going to analyze that clip and stabilize it. So that's going to help take care of some of the jitters that might be in one of your clips. If, say, you were shooting handheld, Stabilize is going to help you stabilize that clip or whatever, however many clips you got, so that way it's smooth, right? And you've got some options there that you can change. If, you know, when you stabilize it the first time, it doesn't look good, it twists it, makes it weird. You got some things that you can change. Now, you can also stabilize over in the color tab. I'm not going to get into that in this video. It's a little more advanced. But right here, this stabilization, I'd say give it a shot if your clip was handheld and is a little wobbly, you know, needs some stabilization. So you can try that out. But the other thing you can do, looking back in the inspector here, scroll all the way down to Retime and Scaling. Now down here, it's going to be just the default settings for the project, which are the most basic settings are the default settings. So right here, we have Motion Estimation. So if I come here, now the project settings are generally set up as a default of Standard Faster. And the farther down this list you go, the better and better DaVinci Resolve does at interpolating frames and just making a smooth footage. Speed Warp is the best one. And if I click it on here, we can try it. I'll let it load up. And I don't know that it's going to be able to play back so well because I don't have a lot of RAM on this computer. But I do know if I installed the studio version and used the graphics card on this computer, it would play back fine because I've tested it. So this is one example where studio would probably work better than the free version. But let's take a look here, see if we can play through this and just see how this clip looks now. So that looks pretty good. It did a pretty good job there compared to what it was before. Now, if we come back to our inspector here, the other thing you can try is come under Retime Process. Now, nearest is the default setting, but optical flow is going to give you a much better result. So you might even want to try optical flow first before you try the speed warp setting here. So now I've selected optical flow. It's going to give me this red bar up here. I'm just going to wait a second till it renders out and then see if we can play through it and see how it looks. So now we've got that blue line across the top here, and I actually did change my motion estimation settings to be something a little bit lower because it's a little taxing on this machine. So let's play through this and just kind of see how that looks. So you see how much smoother that really is, right? Originally, it was a little slow and kind of jittery a little bit, but when we threw on that that setting of optical flow, that really did a big difference. And that's going to make a big difference with any of your B-rolls and your, just trying to smooth out footage and make it look good. It takes a lot of power for your machine to do it. That's why in the studio version, if you can use that graphics card, it's going to make a big difference for you. But that's one way that you can kind of smooth out clips and get some cool, good, smooth B-roll, or just any clips, really. Maybe you're walking and holding it, you're vlogging or something, and you want to smooth all that out. In addition to stabilization, you can do motion estimation or optical flow here, and that's really going to make a big difference. But it's going to be taxing on your machine, so keep that in mind. So I'm going to finish up this B-roll, then we'll talk about some cool stuff like effects, get into some audio, a little bit of color grading, and how to export your project out of DaVinci Resolve. All right, so I think I got all my B-roll clips in there. It's looking pretty good. It's starting to come together a little bit, and if you guys are following along, I hope it's coming together for you guys as well. So what I would do now is I would go back and I'd stabilize some of those clips, like my handheld clips, like right in the beginning. If we look back in DaVinci Resolve here, I got this clip. I'm going to want to open my inspector, and I'm going to use the stabilizer on that. You know, it's a little shaky as I'm walking because I'm holding the camera. So I'm going to stabilize that. It'll bump it in a little bit, and if I play through, just muted it. You can see it smooths it out quite a bit. It looks pretty good. So I'd go through and do that on any clips that need it. And again, a lot of this stuff now, it's going to start to, require a little bit more of your computer as far as power and just processing ability to take care of some of these clips and things we're putting on here. Hey, real quick, if you guys are enjoying this video, could you go and hit that like button for me? Hey, maybe even subscribe if you're interested, but definitely hit the like button. Thanks a lot, guys. Let's get back to the video. So one of the next things you might want to start to look at once you've got your video set up the way you like it is your audio. Audio is super important in videos, especially here on YouTube or really any project you're doing, because people can watch a bad video if it's got good audio, but if your audio stinks, it almost don't matter how good your video looks. Nobody wants to watch it, or it's hard to watch, right? So you want to have some good audio. So let's jump into Resolve, talk about some audio real quick. So let's clean up our window a little here. I'm going to close my inspector. I'm going to close my media pool. And when I'm starting to look at my audio, I want to make sure that I've got good audio levels. Now, looking at the waveforms, that helps a little bit, but I want to open my mixer. So if you come to the top of your screen right here, you've got your mixer. And I'm going to make my, just adjust my view a little bit here so I can see my mixer a little bit better. Now, so in your mixer, you've got a few things going on here. You've got what track it is right here in the middle, as well as on the top. You have a little pan feature here, shows you where your clips are panned, if they are at all. You've got the solo button and the mute button, which is the same as in the track. You've got your solo and mute button right here. And you've got a fader down here. So the fader is going to adjust your levels and can boost or lower your levels if you want. And then you've got your meter right here, and that's going to show you what levels are currently coming from your track. So if I play through this first little clip here, let's watch our meter and see where they fall.
What's happening, guys? Today we're going to be learning how to change the oil on a John Deere L111 tractor.
So ideally, you want your speaking audio to be between -8 decibels and -15 dB. So that's kind of where we want it to fall if possible. Now, I've got tons of videos on audio as far as setting levels, all kinds of effects and dynamics and all kinds of stuff that I've already created. So here's a link above to setting your audio levels, which is probably the most important in getting started working with your audio. You want to set good levels and give yourself a good place to start from. But that said, one quick way that you can kind of get started with your audio here is to normalize your audio clips or your tracks. So let's check this out in Resolve. So how do we normalize our audio? Well, if we come to any clip, and you can select multiple clips at once if you'd like, but I'm just going to select one right here. Looks good. I'm going to right click on it and I come up to Normalize Audio Levels. So what normalization does is it takes whatever audio target level you set, and it will bring a part of that clip. Say you're setting the peaks of your clips, the loudest part of your clip. It'll bring that up to there and adjust everything else accordingly. So if you have a whole waveform that's like this, and this is your peak, boom, it'll bring it up to there. It doesn't dynamically change things. All it does is just set everything relative to whatever your target is. So looking at the normalized audio levels here, if you want to use sample peak program, you can go ahead and use that. And I'll boost this up usually maybe I'll do like -8 as a way to normalize. So then I click normalize, and it's going to analyze that audio clip, and it's going to set the levels at the proper place. And really all it's doing is adjusting the overall volume. That's really what it's doing. So if I click on the clip and I open my inspector and I come to the audio tab here, you can see it adjusted my volume by -5.9. So it actually lowered the volume a little bit. So let's just play through, see what that sounds like.
The process is to make sure you got all of the stuff that you need to get the job done. So
So that sounds okay, but it's going to vary based on how loud maybe your speakers are on your computer or your headphones. It's going to change. That's why you need to watch the levels. It's more important to watch your meters and your levels in DaVinci Resolve than it is to go off of what you hear in your headphones, because you might have your volume set at, whatever, all the way up. So you set your audio so it sounds like it's, good for your headphones. But if your volume's maxed out and your levels are really low, once you, say, export that video, give it to somebody else, upload it to YouTube, whatever it might be, people aren't going to be able to hear your audio. So in this case, I'll leave that where it is. It almost sounds a little low, so maybe I'll just reset that for now in our audio tab here. And to reset any of these, you can just double click it and it's going to reset. So I'm going to go through and look for any clips that look like, the waveforms are a little small. I'm going to play through and I'm going to watch the levels and see how they do. Now you can do this kind of on a track level in Fairlight. You've got more tools accessible to you, and we'll jump over there in a minute. But for now, let's take a look at some of the other effects and things that are here in the Edit tab that you might want to use. So I'm going to close my mixer, close the inspector, going to zoom out my project a little bit, and let's take a look at some effects we have here. So we already talked about transitions, but if we come back to our effects library, and we open that up, we looked at our transitions, we have audio transitions. So if you have two audio clips, say you're trying to join two songs together, you can use a crossfade and just drop that on there. Over here, you've got titles, and you've got all kinds of different titles in here. And again, an awesome feature in DaVinci Resolve 17 is that you slide across the title that you're looking at, it'll give you a preview of it over in your viewer. And that's super helpful because you used to not know exactly what these things did until you dropped it in your timeline. But let's say I want to use, I don't know, a drop-in lower third right here. All I have to do is click on it, drag it down, and drop it on my timeline. And if I put my playhead over it, now we can see it appears here in my viewer. Let's make that a little bigger so it's easier to see. Go with one viewer here so we can see it's right here. Now, if I want to edit that text and I want to open my inspector. So now in the inspector, you've got all kinds of controls for your text. You can change the font. Obviously, you can change it to whatever you want. So we're going to say oil change. Okay, you can put in whatever you want and make any kind of changes that you want. Change the size, the tracking, the spacing, the animation, all that kind of stuff. You can also come over into the settings tab here, which allows you to zoom it, change the position of it, do all these kind of things that are listed here. You've got lots of options. Now, another thing that's helpful for any text or video clips or really anything that's in your timeline video-wise is this tool over here. If you come here, this is the transform tool. So not only can you change it all right in your inspector, but if you click on this guy, well, now I can come over here and I can just change it visually. I want to move it there. I want to move it up here. Wherever you want to put it, you can change it to be wherever you want. And notice over here in the inspector, it updates those numbers for you. So a lot of times this comes in super handy if you don't need to be exact and you want to, put it where visually it looks good at the size that you want it and all that. And if you decide you change your mind, you can come over here and just hit the reset button and it's going to reset all these settings to their default settings. So over in this tool right here, you do have other options too, like crop and dynamic zoom and things like that. But I'm not going to get into that. It's a little more advanced that you don't need to worry about if you're just getting started in DaVinci Resolve. So some text like this one is a fusion text and it's got animation to it and stuff. And it may take a few seconds or whatever to process and load as long as you got your render cache up. So let's go ahead and play through it and watch what the text does on the screen here.
What's happening, guys? Today we're going to be learning how to change the oil on a John Deere L111 tractor. So let's jump.
So there you go. You saw the text pop on, it goes off. And you can also shorten these if you want. You can make it longer. Whatever you want to do, you've got lots of options here, and they're really easy to work with. Now, if you wanted just a basic plain text that doesn't do anything, you'd come up and pick this guy, basic text right here. And then you can change it to do whatever you want. Coming down, the next section here is generators. Most of these I don't use. I do use the solid color one if I want to, maybe put a dark background behind my text over here. So for example, if I click on this guy and I just drag it up, it'll actually add a new track for me. Grab this solid color. I'm going to drop it down behind the text. And then my text is on it, but let's say I only want it behind my text. So if I click on my solid color, I can actually come over to my inspector and use the cropping feature to crop this guy exactly where I want it to be. I'll just make a little adjustments and go like that. And you can adjust the softness a little here. And then boom, as you move ahead, adjust it a little bit there. And turn that off like that. And then I've got a little black background behind my text. So you can use the solid color for things like that. The next section here is effects. So the first thing we have here is awesome. It's an adjustment clip. So if I just click on my adjustment clip and I drag it down into my timeline, we can see that sits on top of my video clips. Now, the way an adjustment clip works is you can make any change you want to an adjustment clip. You can zoom, you can flip it, you can crop it, whatever you want to do, and it's going to affect the clip, the video clip, that's below it. So you don't actually have to change your video clip itself. You can change the adjustment layer. It's like a layer that's above your clip. You can make the changes there, and it doesn't actually affect your clip itself. So it's really cool because it's kind of like a non-destructive way of editing here, even though adjusting your clip is non-destructive, but using the adjustment clip, I think, is a little bit easier, especially when it comes to adding your color grades and things. So if you take a look on the screen here, if I just put my cursor over top of the adjustment clip and I highlight it, let's say I zoom in here, right? I zoom way in. Now, that zoom is on the adjustment clip, so if I move this off, you can see my original clip down here is still exactly how it was. And now whatever's over here is affected by the adjustments I made in my adjustment clip. So this is a really handy feature, and for me, a lot of times I will put an adjustment clip on top of my footage, and I'll do my color grading on the adjustment clip instead of every single individual clip. Because what I can do is just take this adjustment clip, drag it out, do the color grade on it once, and then I'm usually good to go. I'm going to go ahead and delete that for now. The next thing you have here is a Fusion composition. So when you want to make cool graphics or anything in Fusion, you need a Fusion composition. And this is just a blank composition that you can use to get started in Fusion if you're interested in doing that. And so you can check that out if you're interested. And then you've got other Fusion effects here. And if you just hover over these, they'll pop up on the screen there and you can see what they're going to do. You've got binoculars, CCTV, and you can see once I try to access some of these things, it says, you know, that's only available in DaVinci Resolve Studio. So you can buy it now, or you can say not yet. And, you know, you're not going to be able to apply some of these effects. So you'll just have to try things to see what's available in the free version and what's not. All of your basic tools that you're going to need for your basic edits and, you know, to make really cool videos is all part of the free version. It's just once you get into some of the effects, the more advanced things and more advanced tools, that is going to be included with your studio version because you really need some more processing power that comes with the studio version, like being able to use your GPU to get those things to work good. Because otherwise, if you're just using your CPU, it's really just going to bog down your machine, I think, even if you've got a really powerful CPU. So keep that in mind. You want to use the more, you know, advanced effects and things. And there's a lot of templates in there in Fusion even, which if you check out that video I mentioned, you can see what they are. You really want to be able to use that graphics card to kind of speed things up. Now, moving down to the next category, you've got open effects, and these are all kinds of different effects from blurs to mosaic, zoom blur. There's all kinds of color tools and grids. There's so much stuff in here. There's light rays. There is a ton of cool stuff here, and for all of these, you would just take them and drop them right onto your clip, and then you can open your inspector, come to your effects tab here, and start making adjustments. You can sharpen clips, you've got edge detection, stylize things, motion blur. I mean, there is just a ton of cool stuff, and I would recommend that you kind of go through these and check them out. Now, if you can't add them in the DaVinci Resolve, the free version, you'll get a little thing that looks like this on the screen that says DaVinci Resolve Studio. It's watermarked, so you can throw it on there, but you're going to get the watermark. So I'm not sure how many of these are studio only. Some of them are, but you definitely do get some of them with the free version. So keep that in mind. Like this one right here, you can get it in the free version because there's no watermark there. And then finally, you have audio effects here. And again, there's tons of audio effects in DaVinci Resolve. So if you want to see how all these audio effects work and you're really interested in checking them out, I actually have an audio effects series where I go through every single one of these effects. I try them out, I show you the knobs, the buttons, what do they do, I explain it, break it all down, try and make it nice and simple for you, and show you a few examples on how they work. There's a lot of cool effects here that you can use, and you can do all kinds of stuff with your audio. It's pretty cool. So if you want to check those out, link above, you can go check out that playlist and learn more about each one of these audio effects. Now, with the audio effects, you can drop them on a clip or on the whole track in Fairlight. So I explain all that in a bunch of my other audio videos. You can head on over and check that out if you're interested in learning more about that. So that about covers it all for the effect library here in the Edit tab. I'm going to go ahead and close that down. So I'm probably going to do a little bit more work on these. But for now, the next thing I would do is I want to add an adjustment layer above my clips so that I can go and color grade my clips. So how do I do that? Well, for me, I like to add an adjustment layer above all my clips that I can use for color grading. So I'm not going to get too deep into the color grading. I'm just going to kind of give you a brief overview of how it works and some simple changes that you can make to make your video look better. So looking at our timeline here, I'm going to get rid of this text that I put in there just a minute ago, delete that. So I'm going to open up my effects library. I'm going to come down to effects and I want to grab the adjustment clip right here. Go ahead and drop it down onto my timeline. I'm gonna close my inspector, zoom in a little bit. Now I'm just gonna stretch this out over all of my parts of my video that are like the talking head kind of things, right? Now, a quick way you can copy clips is you can select one and hit Control-C, move over and hit Control-V, and it'll copy and paste it for you. Or you can select your clip and just hold your Option or Alt key, drag it over, and it'll make a copy of it there for you. So all my clips that are outside, I'm going to want to put them here. So you notice I ran into my B-roll tracks here because I like to have my adjustment clip go all the way across if I can. That way I only have to do the color grade once. So I'm going to go ahead and select all these guys, and I'm just going to move them up just like that. And if you want to make sure they go directly straight up, you can hold Shift, or you can move your playhead there so they snap right to it as long as your snapping tool right here is on. Now I can select my adjustment clip and just drag it across my timeline. And again, with this B-roll, I'm going to select it. And a cool shortcut here is if you want to move a clip up or down a track, if you hold Option or Alt and press the up or down key, it'll move it tracks for you. But if you've got something above it or below it, it will overwrite it. So by clicking it and dragging it this way, you won't overwrite anything. But if you use the keyboard shortcut I just mentioned, you will overwrite whatever might be there. I'm going to drag this guy out here. Get out to the next B-roll. I'll move that up. Option up. Now, I don't know if the color grade is going to be good enough for the whole thing, but I can make spot adjustments when I need to. What I want to do is I'm just going to come somewhere around here. I want to select my adjustment layer, and now we're going to jump over into the color tab, which is this guy right here. So now that we're in the color tab, we're going to take a look at how to color grade our footage. Now, I'm just going to show you the basics here because there's a ton that you can do in here. And like every single tab in DaVinci Resolve, there is way more than we have time to go over. There's so much stuff that you can do here. It's pretty much crazy. It's crazy. There's so much stuff. I mean, I don't even know everything. But we're going to get into basics here in the color tab. So let's jump into DaVinci Resolve and check it out. So in the color tab, we did run over the whole window, but now let's just refresh a little bit since we have a project actually in our timeline and we're looking at some actual clips here. So just coming across the top here, we've got our different windows that we can have open. Right now, you see my media pool is highlighted here and it's actually open. And I don't need it open in this case, so I'm going to go ahead and just close that. Make my viewer a little bit bigger. On the right here, we have our nodes, and in here is where we're going to put all of our color grades. You can almost think of a node as like a layer. Maybe you want to put one thing per node, or maybe you want to put a bunch of things that are common or similar in the same node. So this is where we actually start to build our color grade, and we have the ability to put it on different nodes and things like that. Again, there's a ton of info that you can learn about here. We're going to cover some basics here in a second. Down below that is my timeline right here. So that shows me the entire timeline. You see I have this red clip selected right here. That's our adjustment layer that we talked about just a little bit ago. And if you don't see your timeline, you can come up here, click on your timeline, and it's going to show it down there for you. You don't necessarily need it, but it's nice to have it on. You can also work on clips. So if you're color grading individual clips, you might want to have the clips on like this instead of your timeline. That way it gives you a little preview of each clip, and you can go clip by clip and make your adjustments there. For now, I'm just going to turn it off, give us a little more space. Now this bottom section, as I mentioned before, is where you do all of your color grading. So you've got different tabs here, and you can click through and take a look at them. A lot of them are kind of self-explanatory as far as what the tools do if you've seen these kinds of things before. Now, some things like noise and motion effects here are going to be reserved for the studio version. You can't really do too much in the free version here. You've got a few options, but it'll pop up a message and tell you if it's only available in the studio version. You've got your curves here that you can work with. You have your color warper here, which is really cool. You can pick a color on the screen and change the color of it. You have your qualifier, which allows you to select certain colors or parts of your image. You've got power windows here. Power windows help you create things like vignettes or select certain areas in your image. You've got a tracker here. This is how you can stabilize things. You can track different things and do all kinds of stuff here. You've got sharpening, as well as some options of things you can do with the key levels here. And you've got sizing and 3D. So you've got a lot of tools here to use, and it can make for a whole crash course by its own. So I'm just going to cover a few of the basic tools here and how you can get going with the color grade. So let's just start right up here. So I have one node, and what I like to do is I like to leave just a plain node right in the beginning. So I want to add a new node, and you've got a few ways to do that. You can right click on here, and you can come down and say, add a node. Now you've got different kinds of nodes here, and they do different things. I'm not going to cover all of them right now, but if you just want a basic node, you can go ahead and add a serial node. And that's going to just drop another node on here for you. So you do have the option, you can label these so you know what's on them. So if you right click on them again, you can say label node. And let's just call this one white balance. Okay, we'll go with that. So let's say we wanted to set the white balance on this image. So I have my node selected here. And now I'm going to come down and I want to make sure I have this option selected right here. These are going to be some of the main tools that you're going to use pretty often when you're trying to grade your footage here. So you've got a few options. When we look down here, there's all kinds of stuff going on. You've got temperature, tint, contrast, pivot, mid, detail. Then you've got your lift, gamma, and gain. You can kind of think of that as your dark tones, your mid tones, and your higher, brighter white tones. And then you've got offset. Now you've got different ways you can adjust these. You have a wheel down here, which you can just drag up and down. That's going to affect, the darker parts of my image here. You've got a little icon here. You can reset it. Now, if you wanted to change, say, the color, say I wanted the shadows or darker areas to be, a little bit of a blue tint, I can drag it down like that. You can change the color a little bit. You've got a ton of options here. And then down at the bottom, you've got color boost to increase the color a little bit, opening up the shadows, dropping the highlights, or brightening the highlights. And any one of these, you can just double click on it to reset it if you need to. You've got saturation, hue, and luma mix. So they do all different kinds of things. Some of the basics you might want to use or start with is one is your white balance. So this little icon right here, that's your white balance. You come into your image here. Let's find something that looks kind of white. Let's go with the gloves there. All right, that looks good. Now it just made a minor adjustment there, which is fine. I'm going to leave that like that. So now that I have the white balance on this node, let's say I want to add in a new node just so I can make any new changes on a different node in case I want to erase changes easily or make changes just to kind of stay organized and keep track of what I'm doing here. So a good keyboard shortcut to add a new node is if you use Alt-S or Option-S if you're on a Mac. In this one, I'm going to label this one. So you label it, I'm going to call it exposure. So let's come on down now. It looks pretty good here, right? But let's say maybe I wanted to open up my midtones a little bit. I want to drop my highlights a little. And again, I'm changing these by just hovering over it with the mouse. I'm clicking and dragging down a little bit. Can open up our shadows a little bit. And color boost, let's try that. Add a little extra color in there. Okay, I'm kind of liking that. And when we're looking at our nodes here, we're actually building on the previous node. So, my white balance has been applied. Now I'm building on that. It's kind of like building up the effect or the color that you really want. So let's say I like this and, it looks good. Now, again, you can go through and make as many changes as you want. You can change things all over. It's really up to you. For example, maybe let's add in a little more contrast here. All right, that looks pretty good. I'm liking that. I want to add in a vignette. So I want to add in another node. Now, you can do everything on one node if you want. It's up to you. I'd recommend using several nodes. I don't know how many you can have. You can have a ton of them. But I would recommend breaking it out just to kind of keep things organized. So I'm going to hit Alt-S, make a new node here. Going to change the name, and I'm going to call this Vignette. So in order to make a vignette, what I'd want to do is come on over to this guy right here, which is my power window. So I want to create a circle or oval vignette. So you've got different shapes. You've got squares, circles, lines, a custom shape, or gradients. So these are ones that are already preset here. You can just click on it, and if you need more, you can add more from right up here. So I'm going to go ahead and add that. Now you see it added a element on my screen here. So if I zoom out by using my middle mouse wheel, just kind of scroll back a little, I can size this guy by grabbing the little handles here. So I want to make that bigger. So these handles on the outside along this blue box here, hopefully you can see that, are going to change the overall size of our circle here. And I can even make it into an oval if I grab the middle ones. And now you notice on the outside, there's two lines. So from this smaller, lighter line on the inside to the lighter line on the outside, that's your feathering. So how much feathering do you want on this? So if I come and grab one of these little red circles, white dot with a red circle, if I drag that out, that's making the feather be a little bit greater on my clip. So let's say I want to make this whole thing a little bit bigger like that. All right, that looks pretty good. So I can make adjustments here by clicking on these little icons, or you can come down to this little transform section right here, and you can click your mouse, hold, and drag back and forth. And that's going to help fine-tune things for you if you want to do it that way. Again, like so many things here in DaVinci Resolve, there's more than one way to do almost everything here. So now I've got my oval in here where I want the vignette to be. So if we look down here at our power window in this little section here, you see we've got two little icons here. So this little icon here is telling us where is the effect or the change going to take place. So right now it's going to take place on the inside of this shape. So I'm going to go ahead and click this. And now we can see it's taking effect on the outside. The other cool thing that we notice is if we look up over here, we notice in our little node here, it's actually showing us what it's affecting. So everything that's gray is not being affected. For example, if I change this back, you can see now we see the inside of the image here, but the outside's getting a little gray on it, right? So that's not what I want. I want the outsides to get dark. So I'm going to select this option here. The gray is the untouched part. Okay, great. So now how do I make the edges a little bit darker? Well, there's a lot of ways you can do it. You can go back to that first tab we were in, or what I like to do is come on over here to the curve panel, and I just like to grab, you know, around my midtones here and drop that back a little bit. Now, if I drop it down a lot, you can see where the effect is taking place, right? Obviously, that's too much, but just to show you what it looks like and so you can see it happening here. So I'm going to bring it back up a little bit. There we go. That looks pretty good. Now, if you make a mistake or say you can't get it back to, you know, the default settings, always look for these little icons here that look like this. This is always a reset button. You see them all down the sides here. You see them on the top here. So I can click that. Boom, resets it back to default settings. So we'll just drop that down just a little bit. And there we go. Decent little vignette on there. And I'm happy to go with that for now. So the last thing I want to do is add a little bit of sharpening to my video here. So I'm going to go ahead and add a new node with Alt-A. Again, you can right-click and select a node if you want. That works too. So on this one, I'm going to relabel this, and I'm going to call it Sharpening. So on here, I'm going to select it, and I'm going to come over to this icon right here. Go ahead and click on that. Now you've got some different options here. And the first one here is radius. So that's going to be your sharpening. So if I bring this in, and again, there's a lot of different ways to do it. This is just a quick, easy way to do it, down and dirty, get it done, right? So if I just scroll down, you can see my image get sharper. Obviously, that's way too sharp. Usually what I recommend is what I do, you know, it's at 0.5 now. I'll just come down one scroll of my mouse wheel, which brings it to 0.47, and I find that's good enough because you don't want to overdo it. The image isn't going to look good, and it's just going to look too crispy, right? So there, I'm happy with that. I think that grade is pretty good. So I could just, you know, move ahead in my other clips and see how things look. Like this one, okay, that's a little overexposed, I think. You know, back here looks okay. This is overexposed. So what I would do is I'd go back, now that I have, like, you know, an overall color grade on my clips here, using the adjustment layer, I'd go back into my timeline. And you can do it, you know, in your clip view or in this view right here. I would click on the clip itself. And now in this clip, I would actually, you know, fix the exposure, you know. So I'm going to add a new node here. And then I'd come back to my first icon right here that we were looking at, the color wheels. And another tip here with the color wheels is that you've got additional options here. So not only do you have this look with the lift, gamma, and gain, but if you click on this little icon right here, you can work with the color bars. And the last one, you can work with your log wheels, which are, you know, shadows, midtones, and highlights. And they're very similar. So let's say this is definitely too bright, so I want to kind of fix the exposure a little bit. So you can come over here, and a cool tip is to set your white points and black points. So you've got these little icons right here. So if you want to set your white points and black points, you go ahead and just click on that. Now it makes it my cursor, basically. And I come up here and find a point in the video clip that should be white. So I know my neighbor's house here, that's white, so I'm gonna hit on that. And then let's say I wanna find a point that should be black in the image here. So I'm gonna come, I don't know, I'll just try clicking right here and see what happens with that. So you can see that kind of helped fix it up a little bit. It's not great, but you know, gets you in the ballpark. Now, let's say I wanna come to my midtones here, my gamma, and I'm just gonna drop this down a little bit. And let's say I wanna try just dropping my highlights. All right, it's a little rough, right? Maybe close down the shadows a little. I don't know. I'm just going to play with it here and see what gives me the look that I want. Maybe I need to drop down the white points. Maybe not. Maybe try the offset a little. So I'm going to go just play with these and go through each clip and make sure that, you know, it looks pretty good while I'm there. Because in this case, I set my overall grade using the adjustment clip, which is fine. But I want to go through each individual clip. And some of them, you know, they might be okay. This probably fine. You know, this one, probably fine. It's a little bit bright, you know, maybe it was a little overexposed when I filmed it. So I would just go through and kind of take a look at each of the clips and make sure everything looks good exposure-wise. Now, a lot of these ones, since we kind of based it off this image, look pretty good. So you can just take a look at your clips and make adjustments as necessary. So let's say I've got a color grade on this clip, and let's just make it something, you know, crazy different, just so we can see what we're working on here. So I select this, and let's just make a change like that. Okay, so let's say I want to copy this color grade onto that clip. So if I select this clip, all I have to do is come to this clip and hit my metal mouse wheel, push it in. and boom, it just copies the color grade right over for you. So that's super convenient. Let's say that I wanted to copy this to several clips. Well, if I select the clip that has the color grade, and then I come over however many, you want to select using my shift key, and then I just click the last one. Or you can use your controller command key to select multiple frames here, or multiple clips. Well, then I can come back to the clip with the grade. I can right click, and then you've got the option to append grade. So that's going to take the color grade on this clip and put it on the end of the nodes for all of the other clips ahead. Boom. You can see it changed all those. If I jump ahead, it made that change to every single one of those clips. So that's a super handy tool and feature to know about, how to copy a color grade from one clip to the next. And again, there's other ways that you can do things here. You can make power grades and save stills and all kinds of stuff, but I'm not going to get into all that now. I just want to give you guys a brief overview of how the color tab works, some of the common tools that you might want to use, and this should be enough to get you going and off and running. And you can always learn some more as you get more experience and you get more comfortable with some of the basic tools. So before we jump out of the color tab and over into Fairlight, there's one more section I want to show you and cover real quick, just so you have an idea of what it does. So back in the color tab here, we didn't really cover this section much right here. Now, in this section, you have the option to create keyframes. You can have different color grades and different things with your color happen over time and keyframe things. It's a little more advanced than I'm going to get into in this video, but I do have a video about it. Link above, you can head on over and check that out if you're interested in how to do that. But it's good to know that this is where you would add keyframes for the different items in the color tab here. Now, you do have some other options here. So right over here, this icon is the keyframe icon. You can also come over here and open up your scopes. Now, you've got different forms of scopes that you can look at. You've got your parades, waveforms, vector scopes, histograms, and this guy on the bottom here. So all these scopes and parades and everything, they can all help you out with your color grading to help you get exactly what you're looking for. Now, you can click on this little guy here, and it's going to pop them out so you can see them all at once. So if you're working on two monitors, that might be helpful to see things that way. And you've got some other options up here too. And then just hit the X if you want to go ahead and close that down. And then the last little icon here is information. It just gives you some info about your clips. Another thing I want to quickly mention here is that in the color tab, you also have access to the open effects. Now, you can add some of these in the edit tab that we saw, but you've got other options in here for adding them onto a node. And you would just simply, click one, drag it onto a node, and then boom, it would apply the effect. And once you drop it on your clip, if you select that node, it'll bring up all of the settings that you can adjust and change for that particular effect. So sometimes it's easier to add the effect here in the color tab versus in the edit tab. It just depends on what you're trying to do. But like I said, you've got lots of different options on how to do different things. I'm just going to undo that so we can get rid of that. And you just want to know that these are there. You can use them here. And like I said, there's a ton more that you can do with all this stuff. But just a general understanding that these are here and you can use them is a good place to start. So in this video, I'm not really going to jump into the Fusion tab more than we've already covered because it's a little more advanced. And if you're just getting started in DaVinci Resolve, you really want to learn all these basics first. That's going to be your best way to go. Now, if you are interested in learning a little bit more about the Fusion tab, how it works, I do have a video on that. I'll try to link to that above or in the description below. You can head over and check that out. It's going to give you some basics of what Fusion is, how it works, and how you can kind of get started in it. So now we're going to jump over into Fairlight. So I'm a big audio guy, love me some good audio. Love working in Fairlight. There's a ton of great tools there. So let's jump on over there and we'll get going with some audio. So to get into Fairlight, click on the little musical notes right down here. And that brings you into the Fairlight tab. So we covered the window already, and now that we've got some clips in our timeline, we can see that we've got our video up here, and we have our audio clips down here in our timeline. So you don't see your video clips in this particular default view. And at this point, I'm okay with that. So let's say we want to make these clips a little bit bigger. Over here, we've got our timeline tools to help us zoom. So I'm going to bring these guys up, make them a little bit bigger. If I use my mouse wheel, you can scroll up and down in the timeline here. We've got our playhead right here. So there's a lot going on here, and I'm just going to try and cover some basics for you. So when we're in Fairlight here, one of the things you want to have open is your mixer, which is right here at the top. Click on this, and that's going to open your mixer. Now, this is going to help us watch the levels of our clip to make sure that they're in the right spot and where we want them to be. So I'm going to actually make my little area down here a little bit bigger by hovering over this middle of the screen and pull these up a little bit. So in my mixer is where I can do a ton of awesome stuff. So just looking at it real quick, you've got effects. So these are all of the different effects that you can do in DaVinci Resolve. There's everything from noise reduction to dynamics and compressors and echoes, and there is just a ton of cool stuff here. So if you're interested in checking them out, I've got videos on my channel about all these guys and how to use them and what they do. There's a lot of cool stuff. You also have an EQ. Now this EQ is a little different than we saw in the Edit tab. This is a lot more robust. You can do a lot more with it, and it's got more points on it. We have 6 bands here instead of only 4 bands like we saw in the Edit tab. Next, you've got the ability to pan your clips anywhere you want, to the front, to the back. Wherever you want to pan it, you've got the option to do that. And below that, we have bus outputs, and that's how you send audio out of DaVinci Resolve. You send it to a main bus out. Then below that, we have our track names with our R, S, and M buttons. So R is record, because you can record directly into DaVinci Resolve with a microphone. S is solo, meaning pick one track or however many you have soloed. It'll play just those tracks. And then you have your mute button right there. And then below that, we have our faders. Now, this is our meter right here. And then our fader is kind of like adjusting our level. If we boost it up, it gets louder. We drop it down, it gets quieter. And if you want to reset it, just go ahead and double click on any of them. So let's play through our clip here, and we're just going to take a look at the meters here and see what it looks like.
And grime off of there, and then you can go ahead and put your cap back on. Put the oil on the side. Next, we're going to take off the oil filter.
All right, so you can see it's kind of hovering in that -10 to -15 dB range, and that's kind of where we want it to be. It could be boosted up a little bit, but that's generally where you want to be. You don't want to peak up too high because you don't want to be clipping and get some bad sounding audio, right? So I do have a bunch of videos on how to make your audio sound better, more professional, take care of noise, all kinds of different stuff. So if you're looking to fix a particular problem you might have, there's a good chance I've got a video on it. So head on over to my channel. You can check that out. See if you can find a fix for whatever issue you might be having. Now, that said, there's a bunch of different things that I would do to these audio clips here. One is I'm going to go through and add an EQ on there, because I think EQ can always help it sound a little bit better. I'm also going to go into dynamics, and I'm going to probably boost my levels a little. I'm going to throw in a little compressor, use an expander or gate there to help reduce some of the background noise. Now, some of this might sound like I'm talking a foreign language to you, and that's okay. Don't worry about it. Just try and deal with audio problems as you come to them. So you should see links popping up at the top of the screen here. I've got videos on how to EQ, how to do dynamics, how to do all these different things and add different effects onto your audio tracks. So definitely check those out if you're interested and you want to know how to make your audio sound better for your video, because this video is already pretty long and I don't want to make it longer for you guys, but I've got tons of videos on all that stuff that you can check out, and it'll really help take your audio to that next level. So I'm just going to jump into Resolve here. I'm going to make a few changes. I'll speed through it here, and hopefully we'll get some better sounding audio, and then we'll jump back to it and go from there. All right, so I think I got some decent audio settings now. I might tweak it a little bit more, but you should have seen a little speed through of me doing it. Usually it doesn't take that long, and if you're using the same microphone all the time, you can make a preset so you don't have to always go back and redo everything. So you can make a lot of presets here. Got a video about that too, so you can head over to my channel, check that out if you're interested in creating presets so you don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time you're making a video. So one problem I just came across here that might be helpful for you. Let's jump into Resolve. Let's say I have this clip right here and I sped through it and I've got my audio here, but I don't want to hear the audio. So if I play through, you can see I sped the clip up. So I want to get rid of that audio. I've got some options, but if you come in here and you just hover over this little line, you're going to get the up and down arrow. I'm just going to click on there and boom, drop it down to 0. Now there's going to be nothing there. And what I can do is throw in a little music there. So that's how you can just kind of turn off a clip or, you know, mute the volume. You can also open your inspector and you've got some options here, which looks very similar to the options that we had in the Edit tab. So the last thing I think we want to do is throw some music under this video, right? Maybe for the intro or something like that, or definitely the B-roll parts where we don't have any noise or any sound. Want to get a cool track so I can throw in some music. So let's go back to the Edit tab. I'm going to show you how to throw in a music track real quick. Then we're going to jump into the Deliver tab. We're going to render out this project. And hopefully, if you guys follow along, you should be able to have your first project created here in DaVinci Resolve and be able to get it exported out. So that way you can share it with your family, friends, the world, whoever you might want to share it with. So here we are in the Edit tab. If you're not sure how to get here, right down here, you click on this guy and that's going to bring you back into the Edit tab. Now, I want to add in some music below my video here, and I didn't have any music when I started my project, so what I did is I went over to a website called Artlist. Artlist is a great website that gives you all kinds of royalty-free music. You pay a subscription price for the year, and you can use anything on their site. They've got tons of great stuff. I've been using them for a while now, and definitely love it. So there's a link in the description below if you want to check that out, and you can go get 2 free months added onto your yearly subscription if you're interested. So I downloaded 2 songs from there. Now we can bring in our music the way that we did earlier in the video, but there's a lot of ways to do things, as we've mentioned several times here. So this is an easier way to bring footage or images or music or anything into your project. So I'm going to go ahead and just bring up my Explorer here, and here's the 2 sounds I want to use. So I'm just going to select them, and it's as easy as just drag and drop. Drag and drop it right into your media pool. So you can do that in any tab. You don't have to be in the media tab. You can do anywhere that you have your media pool open. Just drag and drop anything in there. Makes it super easy. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. So I got 2 different songs because I don't know what I want to use. So if I want to preview it, I can turn on my 2 viewers with this icon right up here. And now when I double click on one of my songs, it'll actually play it in my second viewer up here on the left. So if I hit spacebar, it's playing through it. So I've got the option, just like a video clip, to select in points, out points, whatever I want to do. So here's another song. Let's see what this one sounds like in the beginning. All right, that's kind of cool, something different. Let's try that. So I'm just going to click on this, and if you don't have a track in your timeline already, you can come over here, right-click, and go to Add Track, and you can add a stereo track. I've already got one here, so that's what I'm going to use. So I'm just going to click on my audio clip, bring it over, drop it in the timeline. Now you'll notice those waveforms are big, and this is probably going to be pretty loud, but let's bring our playhead to the beginning here, and let's just see what it sounds like.
Guys, today we're going to be learning how to change the oil on the John Deere L1.
So that's definitely way too loud. One quick way that you can just get this volume at a reasonable level is to right-click on it, come to Normalize Audio Levels, like we saw earlier, and I'm just going to go Sample Peak Program, -8, Normalize. And that should drop down the volume for us. So let's see how that sounds.
We're going to be learning how to change the oil on the John.
So that's definitely quieter, but it's still a little too loud for my voice, right? I'm going to come up here. I'm going to open up my mixer because I always want to check my levels and see where things are at. And the mixer will allow me to do that. The other thing that I notice is that if I look at my waveforms here, I notice that the music starts after I start talking. Well, I want that first hit like this to come in right when I'm talking. So I'm going to just adjust this clip. I can click on the end, drag it back, or you can cut it using Command or Control B or the blade tool. Again, lots of ways to do things. And then I'm just going to drag this guy over. So now it should start as soon as I start talking.
Guys, today we're going to be learning how to change the oil on a John Deere L1.
So that's pretty good, not too bad. But if I look at my levels over here while I play through this clip, you're going to notice they're pretty high, right?
Guys, today we're going to be learning how to change the...
They're almost as loud as me speaking, so I don't want that. So I'm going to select on the audio clip here, my music. Going to hover over and get these 2 little arrows, click and drag down. Now this is just lowering the volume, so I'm going to bring this down to say, I don't know, -25-ish, 26. You can also select your clip, come up to the inspector, go to the audio tab, and right here, drop your volume down. And this number right here is going to be the same that we saw when we adjusted it right on the clip itself. So you've got multiple ways to do things, always multiple ways to do things. So let's play through that and see how that sounds.
Guys, today we're going to be learning how to change the oil on a John Deere L111 tractor.
So that's pretty good. Maybe I want to boost it back up a little bit more there. What are we at? About -21. Sounds good.
Let's jump into this video.
All right, so that's pretty cool. I think that's good, you know, where I'm talking. You want that to be maybe somewhere in that, you know, -20 to -35 range, depending on your music and what it sounds like, right? That's usually what I do. But let's say now I get to this point right here, and since it's B-roll, I've got no audio. I want that music to get a little bit louder. So how do I make it a little bit louder? Well, I want it to fade in again louder. I'm going to use keyframes to do that. So if I select my audio clip, come on up to the inspector. I'm going to keyframe the volume because that's what I want to change. So I'm going to start where I'm at. I'm going to hit the keyframe button right here. And then I'm going to go back a little bit. You can go back however far you want or go forward. So I'm going to go forward just a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and add in another keyframe. And there's 2 ways I can do it. One, I can just adjust the volume, and you can see down here in my clip, it actually added a keyframe for me. Or you can go ahead and click on the icon here to add a keyframe. Either way is okay. So now the volume's going to be up, and now let's close the media pool here and make a little more space. I'm going to scroll over until I get to here, and I know that's where I want the volume to go back down. So I'm going to click add a keyframe here in my inspector, and then I'm going to go backwards just a little bit so it kind of fades out. And let's say we're going to just click the keyframe button again because that's nice and easy. And then I'm going to come on this side and just drop this down to about what it was on the other side. So if we zoom out a little here and we play through that, let's see how that sounds.
Let's jump into this video.
So it didn't go up too much. I can even raise it more. So if I come to my clip, let's bring this guy up. All right, let's play through and see how that sounds.
11 tractor, so let's jump into this video.
And fast forward just a little. All right, so I loaded it too early. I wasn't talking there because I didn't really look at the clips. But you get the idea. That's how you would kind of change some volume. Now, there is ways that you can automate this. It's called audio ducking, and I've got a video on that. You can jump up there and check that out. So you can automate it so that your track that has your vocal talking on it will send a signal out to your track with your music on it, and it will automatically know when to lower that volume. Super handy tool, and I would do that over doing it this way, you know, all day, because it's just quicker, saves you time, and you don't have to go through and do all kinds of tedious work. So for YouTube, that method is going to work great, so you can check out that video if you're interested in how to do that. So you can go through these audio clips here, music, or whatever kind of audio clip you might bring in, make any changes. You know, you can fade the beginning, the end, cut them, do whatever you want, all kinds of things, just like we've talked about in lots of other parts of this video. So in a nutshell, that's how you would add in a music track below some of your speaking tracks. All right, so let's say you've edited your whole project, everything's done, it looks awesome, you're happy with it, and you're ready to export it so you can go share it with the world, your friends, your family, YouTube, whoever. So how do we do that? Oh, and by the way, if you made it this far, congratulations, because this is not an easy program. You're doing great. I know there's a lot of information I've been packing in here. Hopefully all those timestamps, you can jump back to things later on, will help you out. But I just want to say, good job. You're doing great. Let's jump into the Deliver tab now and export that project out for you. So looking in DaVinci Resolve here, down here we have the Deliver tab. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. Now this is where we're going to export our project from DaVinci Resolve. So on the left-hand side here are our render settings. So you've got a bunch of presets up here, and you're more than welcome to choose one of those. And if you just scroll across, you can see you have audio only, Pro Tools, Final Cut. If you're moving to, you know, another program to do some more work, you've got Vimeo, YouTube, and then you've got custom settings right here. So for example, if I click on YouTube, you're going to see it's got a bunch of things already set for me. It is important to note, I don't think that these export settings for YouTube are all that great. I would recommend doing your own custom settings, which are not hard. I'm going to talk about them here real quick, but I've also got a video up here. You can go check that out a little more in depth on how to set them up and how to save the preset. But looking back here in DaVinci Resolve, I'm going to click on the custom tab. First, you've got a file name. You can name it whatever you want. I'm going to name this John Deere Oil Change. Next, you would click down here, browse, and pick your location. So I'm in my crash course here. I've got a folder for final video. And I'm just going to hit save. So that's where it's going to save it. The next section here is render. You want to do a single clip. That's going to be one long video clip of your entire timeline. In the video section here, you've got export video. Make sure that's checked on. I'd recommend using either QuickTime or MP4, whichever one that you'd like. The codec is going to be by default H.264. You can use that or change it if you know what else you want to use. You've got your resolution and frame rate, which are going to match your timeline. And then you've got your quality settings here. You can use automatic, but I would recommend that you come down here to the restrict to. And I'm going to change this to 30,000 and leave that right there to start. And then everything else in here, I'm just going to leave it as it is. You've got advanced settings here. I'm going to leave all that as it is. Subtitle settings, leave all that as it is. Now you can just come down here, click Add to Render Queue. And you can see it popped it right on up over here for us. And it saved all of our settings. So this is going to stay here. And anytime we want to render this project out with these settings, we're just going to click that, come on down to here, and hit render all. The other thing you just want to check too is make sure right here when it says render that you have either your entire timeline checked, which is going to be the default settings and probably what you want to do, or you can select an in and out range. So for example, maybe you want to run a test and see what a little part looks like when it's exported. You can use an in and out range here, and that's just going to give you the footage between those in and out points in your export. Now you can have as many different types of exports as you want here. Different sizes, different orientations, whatever it is you might want to do. You can have tons of options here. And then once you hit render, DaVinci Resolve is going to go through. It may take some time depending on your project, your computer specs and all that. Going to go through, render out that file, put it in the location where you specified there on the render settings. You should have your video all set and exported from DaVinci Resolve. All right, guys, so there you go. You should have completed your first project here in DaVinci Resolve, and a big congratulations to you guys because this program is not easy. There's a lot to it. The learning curve is steep, but if you made it through this video, I think I gave you enough good tips and tricks on how to get your first project done here in DaVinci Resolve. So if you want to know more about any topics, definitely check out my YouTube channel. I've got tons of great videos for beginners on how to do different things in DaVinci Resolve. So give this video a thumbs up for me if you could. If you purchased the files to follow along with us, thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you want to say a little thank you to me and the channel, feel free to head on over to my Buy Me a Coffee page, buy a cup of Joe or a couple. Love me some good coffee, right? Long edits need good coffee, right? Or if you want to head down below the video here, there should be some merch, a little Focus. My company name is Focus Photography and Design, hence the word Focus, but pick up a mug, a shirt, or something like that. If you guys go pick anything up, I would really appreciate it, and it all goes to help support our channel here and everything that we do. So thank you guys for hanging in there. If you have a question, leave a comment down below. Thank you for sticking with me and the opportunity to share this awesome program with you guys, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Peace!